Good morning, class. So ito, continue tayo with our discussion for conceptual framework and financial accounting. So for this session, marami-rami tayong mga standards na pag-uusapan, but gaya na sabi ko dati, focus tayo sa theories niya. Hindi tayo mag-focus sa solving. With that, start na tayo sa lesson natin. So dito ngayon tayo sa Employee Benefits, PAS 19. Now, gaya na sabi ko sa kwento ko last time, Employee Benefits, isa yan sa mga mahihirap na topics under financial accounting. Particularly sa post-employment benefits, specifically sa defined benefits part na yun. Pero ngayon, hindi niya yung poproblemahin sa intermediate accounting part 2 na. Kasi ngayon, pag-uusapan natin is yung theories. So, ano nga ba itong employee benefits? Pero before that, learning objectives muna tayo. Una, medyo mayanong ilong kain. Differentiate between the four classifications of employee benefits under PAS 19. Pangalawa, state the timing of the recognition of employee benefits. Pangatlo is differentiate daw natin between a defined contribution plan and a defined benefit plan. Ito yung part na nagpapahirap sa employee benefits. And pangapat, state the accounting procedures for the defined benefit plan. So, ano ba tong employee benefits? From the word itself ba? In layman's term nga ito minsan In layman's term, yung benefits na nare-receive ng isang employee from his employer. From his or her employer. Dahil, syempre, pag nagtatrabaho ka sa employer mo, meron ka talaga ma-receive na benefit. So, according to PAS 19, para mas specific na yung definition, sabi ni PAS 19, employee benefits are all forms of consideration given by an entity in exchange for services rendered by employees. Siyempre, di ba? Sabi ng Constitution natin, bawal na ang involuntary servitude, meaning bawal na ang maging slave. So, for every effort, for every work, kailangan you are properly compensated. So yan, employee benefits. All forms of consideration. Bakit bibigyan ng consideration ni employer si employee? Because the employee has rendered services for the employer, the entity. So with that, merong benefits na na-receive si employee for the services he or she rendered to the entity. Ngayon, na-mention sa learning objectives yung 4 na categories ng employee benefits. Ito sila. Short-term employee benefits, post-employment benefits, yung under dito, yung nagpapahirap, si defined benefit plan. Other long-term employee benefits and termination benefits. Now, if makita nyo sa libro nyo, sa book ni Zeus, etong dalawang to, 2 pages lang niya. 2 pages lang ang kinain. Kasi madali lang to eh. Oo. Pero of course, yung nasa book ni Zeus ngayon, sa Conceptual Framework and Accounting and Accounting Standards, of course, for CFAS lang yan. More on theories yan, Pansin nyo, more on theories yan. Pero pag bubuksan nyo na yung intermediate accounting books, yun. Siyempre, in-depth discussion doon. Kasi nga, yung goal dito sa CFAS is to familiarize the students to the concept para hindi na kayo mawindang, hindi kayo ma-shook pagdating nyo ng intermediate accounting sa in-depth discussions doon. Kasi may idea na kayo kung ano yung pinag-uusapan sa standards. So ito, start tayo sa, let's go to short-term employee benefits. Now, short-term employee benefits are employee benefits other than the termination benefits, kasi may separate yan siya other than termination benefits that are due to be settled within 12 months. Within 12 months after the end of the period in which the employee has rendered the related service. So, from the words ito, within 12 months, di ba? Napag-usapan natin yan. Yung meaning ng 12 months, yung within, nagiging short term siya because of the 12 months. Like, ito yung end of the reporting period, ito yung timeline, ito yung end of the reporting period. Within 12 months, from the end of the reporting period, considered pa yan siya as short term. Huwag yung kakalimutan yan. Maraming mga ganyang tanong na 12 months or 11 months after or 366 days, 70 days after, mga ganong question, huwag nyo kalimutan, 12 months. Within 12 months, after the reporting period, considered pa na short term. Maraming ganyan sa accounting. Wala lang yun yung mga basic na hindi dapat nakakalimutan. So ngayon, short-term employee benefits within 12 months after the end of the period in which the employees has rendered the related service. Anong mga example niyan? Ito, familiar kayo dyan, salaries, wages, SSS, PhilHealth, and pag-ibig contribution. Pag-ibig, ito yung wala ka. Paid vacation leaves and sickness. Pala pag short nga pa, may paid vacation leaves ka, kahit mag-absent ka, bayad ka pa rin. And required dyan. Profit sharing and bonuses. Ito. Yung mga profit sharing scheme ng mga companies, bonuses, na kung may ma-earn na profit yung company, some portion of that, mga 10% siguro, will be distributed to the employees. If I remember correctly, sa PwC, yung auditing firm sa Manila, yan, mayroon silang profit sharing scheme. Na kung saan, if may na-target na reach na yung target profit nila, then a portion of that, a percentage of that will be distributed to the employees. Ito, non-monetary benefits, free goods and services, yung mga libreng isang sakong bigas per month, clothing allowances, yun, mga non-monetary benefits yun. Mga free rides, di ba? Mga free shuttle, yun. Yan, short-term employee benefits. Ngayon, recognition niya, paano? When an employee has rendered services to an entity, during an accounting period, the entity shall recognize the undiscounted amount of short-term employee. Sir, tandaan nyo, undiscounted. Bakit siya undiscounted? Kasi short-term siya. Long-term lang yung dinidiscount natin, yung ginagawa natin ng present value. Okay? Since short-term to, wala tayo dyan. Kung ano yung value niya, within the short-term, yun pa rin yung value niya. Ngayon, kung anong value niya ngayon, within the short-term, ganun pa rin yung value niya. Kaya hindi natin, or insignificant, kumbaga, yung effect sa value niya. Kaya, undiscounted siya, hindi siya pinipresent value. Pero kung long-term yan, ang assumption dyan, yung value niya ngayon, medyo iba na yung value niya, significantly different sa value niya sa future. Yeah? Mga ganun. Kaya, yun dinidiscount yung mga long-term. Ang short-term, hindi. Undiscounted amount of short-term employee benefits expected to be paid in exchange for that service. So pag shall be recognized as a liability or accrued expenses after deducting any amount already paid. Shall be recognized as an asset. Prepaid expense, familiar naman kayo sa idea ng prepaid expense. Basically, ang idea ng prepaid expense is parang deferred expense, di ba, na sa word na yun? Parang nag-set aside ka na ba ng pambayad mo for a future expense. Yun, prepaid expense. Parang nag-set aside ka ng amount ng funds para pambayad mo for a future expense. Yun ang basically idea ng isang prepaid expense. So, as an asset, so hindi pa siya considered as an expense, tandaan nyo yan, but rather as an asset. Pero for sure, in the future, magkakaroon ng iibahin yan, magiging expense na yan. Kasi nga, ang idea ng prepaid expense, ulitin lang natin, mga basic, dapat tandaan nyo yan, is nag-set aside ka lang ng funds for a future expense. Dito ko naman natulog. As an asset or prepaid expense if the amount paid is in excess of the undiscounted amount of the benefits incurred, provided that the prepayment will lead to a reduction in future payments or cash refund. Ito, di ba? Parang yung required mo lang bayaran is 1,000 pesos, pero ang total mong nabayad is 1,500. So, yung 1,000, okay. Bayad na yun. Mabigyan na si employee. Yung 500, sige, iyan mo na lang na, sige, dagdag na lang yan sa future bayad ko sa kanilang salaries, di ba? Parang ganun. Prepaid expense na nag-set aside ka na ng fund para sa future expense, in this case, the salaries of the employee or the benefits that the employees will receive, their compensation. And pangatlo, as an expense, unless the employee benefits forms part of the cost of an asset, example given, as part of the cost of the inventories or property, plant, and equipment. Ito mga terms na importante. Short-term compensated absences. Ito yung mga compensated absences. Basically, ito yung mga paid leaves, mga vacation leave, and sick leave. So, meron tayong accumulating and non-accumulating when it comes to the compensated absences. Sa accumulating compensated absences, these are those that are carried forward and can be used in future periods if the current period entitlement is not used in full. Accumulating compensated absences may either be vesting and non-vesting. So, from the word itself, accumulating compensated absences. Meaning, let's say you are entitled to 12 paid sick leaves or vacation leaves per year. Sabi natin, you are entitled to 12 paid vacation leaves per year. Ngayon, pag sinabing accumulating yan, ibig sabihin, kahit pag example, 6 lang yung nagamit mo for this current year, yung remaining 6 maki-carry forward next year. Oo. Ngayon, may mga terms yun na it can only be carried forward for 3 years, it can only be carried forward for 2 years, na mga ganun. So, ganun. So, pero ganun yung idea niya. You are entitled to 12, 6 lang yung ginamit mo, yung remaining 6 na hindi mo nagamit, carry forward yan sa next year, sa future periods. Ngayon, under accumulating, may dalawa tayo, vesting and non-vesting. Sa vesting, wherein employees are entitled to a cash payment for unused entitlement on leaving the entity. Let's say, for example, accumulating vesting compensated absences yan. Tapos meron kang let's say 6 days na unused. 6 days yung paid vacation leaves na hindi mo nagamit. Ngayon, pag aalis ka na sa entity, yung 6 na unused na yun, it will be converted to cash, bibigay yun sa'yo, unused entitlement. Because that is vesting, yun yung stipulation, it is vesting. So, upon leaving the entity, yung unused na compensated absences mo, let's say yung paid vacation leaves, mako-convert yan into cash payment. Ngayon, pag non-vesting yan, Diyos ko, opposite ni vesting, of course. Kapag umalis ka na ng entity, unlike sa vesting, wala kang marireceive. Cancel yan agad. Wala. Vesting, upon leaving the entity, yung unused entitlement mo, convert yan to cash. Non-vesting, umalis ka ng entity, wala kang marireceive from the unused. So, pag non-vesting yun sa kontrata mo, gamitin mo before ka umalis sa entity, sayang naman, di ba? Kasi hindi mo ma-convert into cash eh. Ngayon, on the second, short-term compensated absences, the non-accumulating, compensated absences are those that are not carried forward. No liability expense is recognized until the absences occur because employee services does not increase the amount of benefit. Meaning, unlike sa accumulating, sa non-accumulating, for the current year lang yan siya. So, let's say for example, you are entitled to 12 paid vacation leaves. Nagamit mo lang 8. So, may remaining 4 ka pa. Pagdating ng next year, wala, canceled agad yan. Hindi na siya magagamit. Wala nang benefit from that. So, yun yung non-accumulating. From the word itself, non-accumulating. Ito, the expected cost of services. Ito, when accumulating, when the employee renders services that increases their entitlement to future compensated absences. Non-accumulating, when the absences occur. Natandaan, sa pag-accumulating yan, example, meron mga unused entitlement, di ba? Yung unused entitlement na yun, magiging liability in the future, maki-carry forward yun. Tandaan nyo. Sa non-accumulating, gaya na sabi dito, no liability or expenses recognized kasi nga, hindi siya naki-carry forward. So, wala kang nire-recognize. Pero sa accumulating, nire-recognize yan. Ngayon, ito, post-employment benefits. And to be honest, gaya na sabi ko, ito yung nagpapahirap sa employee benefits, particularly yung defined benefit plans. Pero, gaya na sabi ko ulit, intermediate accounting, part 2 niya yung problemahin. Focus tayo dito sa familiarization ng concept. So, post-employment benefits, this is the second category under PAS 18. So, ano ba itong post-employment? From the word itself, di ba? Post-employment. Ibig sabihin, after employment. after employment. So, post-employment benefits are employee benefits other than termination benefits. Kasi termination benefits, di ba? Post-employment rin yan. Kasi nga, na-terminate ka na, di ba? Pero other than termination benefits, that are payable after the completion of the employment. Post-employment benefit plans are classified as either defined contribution plans or defined benefits plans. Ito yung pinag-usapan dito yung yung insurance, yung retirement di ba? Post-employment yun, retirement. So, retirement fund ng employees mo. Ngayon, siyempre, provided nyo ng batas, magkano ka ng retirement plan para sa employees mo? Yeah? Sa employees mo, usually sa mga insurance company kayo pupunta, o sa mga investment mutual funds, etc. Basta financial companies engaged in finances, di ba? So, mag-ano ka ng plan, ng retirement plan for your employees. Siyempre, in that retirement plan, magkakaroon ng contribution. Para pag retire ng employee mo from your company, may ma-receive silang retirement benefits. Basta yun yung basically pinag-uusapan under the post-employment benefits. Ma-retirement plan para sa employees mo. Ngayon, ano mga stipulations in that retirement plan? Magkano ma-receive nila? Magkano ang co-contribute mo? Or, kayo ba dalawa ng employees mo? Co-contributors ng retirement plan niya? Di ba? Ganun. So, yun yung pinag-usapan sa post-employment benefits. Yun lang yung dalawa. Magkano ang contribution, magkano yung ma-receive. Magkano yung premiums na babayaran, magkano yung benefit o yung retirement na ma-receive ng employee mo. And with that, it is classified into two. Defined contribution plans and defined benefit plans. Ngayon, sa defined contribution plan, ito yung madali. Defined benefit, Sa defined contribution plan, the employer commits to contribute to a fund which will be used to pay for the retirement benefits of the employees. Risk that the retirement benefit may be insufficient rests with the employee. Sa defined benefit plan, the employer commits to pay retiring employees a definite amount, and the risk that the retirement benefit may be insufficient rests with the employer. So, ganito yung difference sila dalawa, class. Defined contribution plan. From the word itself, defined contribution. Alam mo magkano yung babayaran mo. Alam mo magkano yung i-contribute mo, i-remit mo para sa retirement plan o sa fund ng employees mo. Oo, alam mo magkano yung i-contribute mo. Kaso ang problema, hindi man to problema, kaso ang issue, hindi mo alam or it is unknown kung magkano yung benefit na ma-receive. O yun na, defined contribution plan, alam mo magkano yung i-contribute mo. May fixed amount. Oo, stated, expressed. Kaya nga defined contribution. So, ang issue, yung magkano ang magiging benefit ng retirement plan. So, since unknown yun, the risk that the retirement benefit may be insufficient rests with the employee. Kasi alam mo yung contribution Alam mo magkano babayaran mo. Ang hindi lang alam or ang unknown lang is magkano yung benefit na ma-receive. So, since yung benefit na ma-receive ay kay employee mapupunta, and since yung benefit na yon is unknown or uncertain, the risk of that falls to the employee. Ngayon, going to the defined benefit plan. Ito, may idea na kayo. Defined benefit plan. Yung benefit na ma-receive ng employee mo, known. Oo, stipulated dyan sa contract. Magkano yung benefit na ma-receive ng employee. However, the problem arise, or the issue that in this case, opposite dito, is magkano yung magiging contribution mo. Oo. So dito, alam magkano yung contribution, kasi defined contribution plan yan, pero yung benefits na ma-receive ng employee, unknown, uncertain. Hence, the risk that the retirement benefit may be insufficient rests with the employee kasi yung employee makaka-receive ng benefit, di ba? Tas unknown yung or uncertain yung amount of benefit, so the risk falls to the employee. On the other hand, sa defined benefit plan, yung benefit na ma-receive ng employee, alam na alam. Sure na sure kayo. Stipulated sa contract However, the problem is, or the issue is, that the retirement benefit may be insufficient rests with the employer kasi unknown or hindi pa defined kung magkano yung contribution na gagawin or na i-contribute or i-remit ni employer. So the risk is falls with the employer. Oo. Ngayon, sir, bakit sabi niyo nagpapahirap yung defined benefit plan? Kasi yung computation natin class na po sa contribution. So dito, since alam mo na kung ano yung contribution, wala na masyadong computation. Wala na masyadong pahirap sa computation. However, pagdating sa defined benefit plan, since yung contribution yung unknown variable, yun yung nagpapahirap ng computation. Oo, kasi ang kino-compute kasi natin dito is yung magkano yung contribution na kailangan gawin. Eh dito, alam mo na yung contribution, defined na. Eh dito, hindi mo alam, yun yung unknown variable. Tapos marami pa yung ek-ek pagdating dyan. Ito mga other relevant terms. Contributory. Both the employee and the employer contribute to the retirement benefits of the employee. So pareho sila, co-contributor sila. Co-contributor or co-contributor. Sa non-contributory, si employer lang ang nagko-contribute. Sa funded, a fund is transferred to a trustee who will manage the fund. So usually mga mutual funds yan, investment companies, insurance companies. The trustee assumes obligation of paying retirement benefits out from the fund and directly to retiring employees. So meaning, dito may sinama kayong third party. Oo, may kabit. So ikaw ito si employer, you, employer, ito si trustee. So when it comes to the retirement, si employer, yung contribution, ibibigay niya kay trustee. Ngayon ito si trustee, sa'yo mamamahala niyan, sa'yo rin yung magbibigay sa'yo. So may third party pang dinaanan. Dito sa unfunded, from the word itself, opposite ni funded, diretso na. Si employer na ang mamamahala dyan. Hindi niya idadaan sa third party. So, kung ako sa inyo, mas maganda na sa third party kasi yung third party na ang mamumblema dyan, di ba? Kasi, lalo na pag hindi inline sa retirement yung company mo, like wala kayong idea or specialization pagdating dyan, punta na lang kayo sa third party para third party na yung or sa trustee na yung mag-asikaso niyan. So, accounting for defined contribution plan. The accounting for defined contribution plans is straightforward because the reporting entity's obligation for each period is determined by the amounts to be contributed for the period. Kaya nga sabi, straightforward. Ang kinocompute kasi natin dito is yung contribution. Since ito, defined na yung contribution, given agad. Wala masyadong computation. Consequently, no actuarial assumptions are required to measure the obligation or the expense and there is no possibility of actuarial gains or loss. Sir, ano yung actuarial? Pag nabasa nyo yung book, may idea naman kayo kung ano actuarial. Pero, let's say, in a basic, in layman's term, ganito yun ang actuarial. Itong si actuary, yan yung nagko-compute ng actuarial assumptions. There are certain variables. There are not certain variables. May mga uncertain variables kasi tayo. Paano ba natin? Ito yung gusto nyong malaman. Ito yung target nyo. Ngayon, siyempre, bago nyo marating yung target nyo, may mga variables kayo na kailangang malaman. Oo, para marating yung target nyo. Hindi to sperm cell, egg cell. Ngayon ko lang na. Oo, ito yung mga variables. Ngayon, some of that variables are uncertain. Oo, uncertain. Ngayon, ang trabaho ni actuary is to give value to those uncertain variables para pag magko-compute na siya, mararating nila yung goal na to. Ganon yung in layman's term, trabaho ni actuary. Yung mga uncertain variables na yun, kukompute niya yan using math and statistics. So, magaling siya dyan sa math and statistics. Oo. Lalagyan niya na yung definite value, yung unknown or uncertain variables na yun, para pag mag-compute na, para marating na yung goal, may ano siya may pag-i-compute siya. So, binibigyan niya ng value, binibigyan niya ng definition, yung mga uncertain, yung mga unknown variable. Sir, apply that in our case. Retirement. Pero alam, meron naman ditong actual assumptions, pero ito, simple discussion muna. Retirement plans, retirement benefits. Ngayon, pagdating dyan, ano yung mga unknown or uncertain variables? Kailan magre-retire? Kasi hindi mo alam kung kailan gusto mag-retire ng employee. Oo, uncertain variable yan. Kailan mamamatay? Bakit mahalagang malaman kailan mamamatay? Kasi yung payment is until mamatay ang employee. So, from the date of retirement to the date of death, gaano katagal yan? Oo, life expectancy, mga ganon. O yun, mga unknown variables yan. Ngayon, si actuary, yun yung trabaho niya. Yung mga uncertain variables na yun, yung mga unknown variables na yun, lalagyan niya ng value. Para pag mag-compute kayo ng actuarial assumptions nyo, meron kayong assumptions, meron kayong estimation. Yun yung trabaho ng actuary. Now, in this case, sa defined contribution plan, since yung contribution is already definite, alam na, straightforward, oo, kasi yun yung punto dito Dito sa baba, yun yung punto. Magkano yung co-contribution? Yeah? So since alam naman yung contribution at the first place, no actuarial assumptions are required to measure the obligation or the expense, and there's no possibility of any actuarial gains or losses kasi alam nyo na yung contribution at the first place. Oo, ginagawa nyo lang to in this concept, in this context, kapag defined the benefit plan, ano yung contribution. Pero since ito defined contribution, alam na magkano yung co-contribute employee kasi employer, kasi yun man yung purpose natin dito, no need na mag-actuarial assumptions. Ngayon, pagdating sa defined benefit plan, di ba gaya sabi natin, defined benefit plan, alam magkano yung benefit na marireceive ni employee. However, hindi mo alam magkano yung contribution. Contribution ang hinahanap natin dito So with that, kailangan i-compute natin yung contribution. So the accounting for defined benefit plan is complex because actuarial assumptions are required to measure the obligation and the expense, and there is a possibility of actuarial gains and losses. Obligations are measured on a discounted basis, so magpe-present value kayo dyan. So yun na. Since hindi nyo alam magkano yung contribution, and since contribution yung hinahanap natin dito, yun na. Mag-actuarial assumptions na kayo. So ito, accounting procedures for defined benefit plans. Ito, nasa book na ito. Step 1. Step 1, determine the deficit or surplus. So pag negative to, deficit. Pag surplus, positive. So ano to? FVPA, fair value of the plan asset. Now to, guys, sabi na sa book, fair value of the plan assets, meaning yan yung funds na meron ka, kung saan dyan sa funds na yan, kukunin yung pambayad mo ng retirement benefits ng iyong employee. Oo, dyan sa plan assets na yan. Dyan kukunin yung pondo pambayad. Minus the present value of the defined benefit obligation. Meaning ito, defined benefit obligation. Meaning, ito naman yung present value ng magkano ang kailangan mong bayaran. Oo, magkano yung kailangan mong bayaran? Magkano yung entitled benefits yung meron yung employee mo? Magkano yung entitled benefits ng employee mo, yung present value niya. So ito, plan assets, dyan kukunin yung pondo. Defined benefit obligations, magkano yung dapat ma-receive ng employee mo. So pag positive to, ibig sabihin, mas mataas yung available funds mo compared sa magkano yung kailangan mong bayaran para sa benefits ng, magkano yung kailangang pondo para sa pambayad ng benefits ng employee mo. Oo, kasi mas mataas yung may extra ka pa kumbaga, kung surplus to. However, Pag negative yan, ibig sabihin, mas maliit yung available funds mo as compared sa magkano yung entitled benefits na dapat ma-receive ng employees mo. Kaya deficit tawag doon. So maganda pag surplus, di ba kasi may extra ka pa. Ngayon sa step 2, determine the net defined benefit liability or asset. Kapag deficit lang lumabas dito, negative, then the deficit is the net defined benefit liability. Kapag surplus naman, hindi automatic na kung anong yung surplus ditong lalabas. Hindi automatic na magkano yung lalabas dito. Net defined benefit asset is the lower of the surplus and the asset ceiling. So asset ceiling, yung ano yan eh. Magkano yung maximum, kaya nga asset ceiling na pwedeng pagkunan. Don't worry about this So, usually naman tong asset ceiling given naman to. If I remember correctly. So, pag hindi given yung asset ceiling, din diretso kayo agad sa surplus kung magkano lalabas dito. Para pag given yung asset ceiling, yung lower sa kanilang dalawa. The asset ceiling is the present value of any economic benefits in the form of refunds from the plan or reductions in future contributions to the plan. So, usually given naman yan eh. So, yan step 1, step 2. Step 3, determine the defined benefit cost. So, sir, kala ko ba sir wala tayong computation? Wala tayong computation dito. Dinidiscuss lang natin to for concept purposes. Okay, chill lang. Problemahin nyo na to. Pangatlong beses ko na to sinabi ngayon. Problemahin nyo lang to pagdating yun ng intermediate accounting part 2. Para, ito, purpose na talaga natin dito is to familiarize you with the concept eh. Ito, minimemorize pa na. Ito, minimemorize namin to nung board exam pa. Minimemorize to. Oo, nandyan pa yung tawag dito, yung index card ko, di ba sabi nga? Index card ko. Sinulat niya namin lahat, memorize niya. Tapos pag magpa-practice, kuha ng yellow paper, tapos isulat-sulat yung equations. Para memory, lalo na pag formulas talaga yung required i-memorize sa MAS, sa ADVAC, Advanced Accounting, ito sa Financial Accounting Reporting. Memorize talaga yan ng formulas. So taxation, hindi pwede ang familiarization ng formulas class. Kasi familiarization, tapos may na-omit ka o may nadagdagan ka, patay sila ang computation mo, mali answer mo. So to determine the defined benefit cost, service cost and net interest sa profit or loss, kita nyo, current service cost, any gain. To. Then, ito sa baba, sa kanya, sa other comprehensive income siya, ni-recognize itong dalawa sa P&L, profit or loss. Dyan sila, total defined benefit cost. Ito, definition of terms. Current service cost, this is the increase in the present value of a defined benefit obligation resulting from employee services in the current period. So, mga salaries, wages yan. Kaya nga current service, di ba? Ito naman, past service cost is the change in the present value of the defined benefit obligation resulting from a plan amendment or curtailment. Sorry, burp. Ito, gain or loss on settlement, the difference between the present value of the defined benefit obligation and the settlement price. So ito, pag mayroon ka defined benefit obligation, tapos yung settlement price niya. Pag mas mataas yung settlement price over sa tawag dito? Sa ito. Alam yung feeling na para mag-start ka na magkaroon ng sipon. So, saan ako? Ito number 4. Interest cost on a defined benefit obligation is the increase during the period in the present value of a defined benefit obligation which arises because the benefits are one period closer to settlement. Actuarial gains or losses are changes in the present value of defined benefit obligation resulting from experience adjustments and the effects of changes in actuarial assumptions. Dito yan sila, Don't worry, when it comes to computation, given to sila. Ang, ito mga interest na to, siyempre, i-multiply nyo yan. Interest, income, plan, assets. Given yan, ito mga percentage yan ng given. Multiply nyo, okay. Ito, multiply mo dito, okay. Asset ceiling, Kung given, okay, multiply mo, lagay nyo dito, add. Net interest on defined benefit, actuarial gains or losses, given niya, difference between interest income on plan assets and return on plan assets, given, kukompute nyo yung mga interest, yung ROA ng difference between interest on effect of asset ceiling and changes in the effect of asset ceiling. Ito, notori, I2, dyan nyo talaga ma-experience yan. Huwag nyo muna problemahin ngayon. Etong mga theories muna tayo, okay? Huwag nyo problemahin yan ngayon. Theories lang tayo ngayon. I'm not planning on giving you any solving because that is against my principle in this subject. Charot. So, actuarial assumptions, to na-discuss natin yung nito, yung basically yung simple discussion nito sa previous slide ito, di ba? You have to know something. So, in order to know this something, you have variables to consider. However, some variables are uncertain or cannot be quantified or hard to quantify. So, yun. Actuary. So, pagdating dito, actuarial assumptions are an entity's best estimates of the variables that will determine the ultimate cost of providing post-employment benefits because there are certain variables na mahirap matukoy. Ito na yun, no? Demographic assumption about the future characteristics of employees who are eligible for benefits. Demographic assumptions deal with matters such as mortality, both during and after employment. Oo. Kailan mamamatay? Anong age usually? Rates of employee turnover, disability and early retirement, yan, no? Mga mahirap yan, ha? Mahirap na assumptions. The proportion of plan members with dependents who will be eligible for benefits, claim rates under the medical plans. Yan. Ito yung mga uncertainties na kailangan bigyan ng value ni actuary. Oo. Ano yung mortality rate? Anong age na usually namamatay? Rates of employee turnover. Gaano karaming employee ang umalis? Gaano karaming employee ang pumapasok? Disability. Lalo pag risky yung trabaho, di ba? Risky jobs. Early retirement. Sino yung sa kanila before mag-60, before mag-65? Nag-retire na. Proportion of plan members with dependents. Sino-sino yung may mga anak dyan? Sino-sino yung may mga asawa dyan? Di ba? Claim rates under medical plans. Gaano kadalas? Di ba? Kaya ba yan ng CPE? Hindi. Pupunta ka talaga sa isang tao na specialize yung ganyang klaseng trabaho sa mga actuary yan. And usually, yung mga actuary nasa insurance, nasa insurance industry yan sila. Ito, financial assumptions dealing with items. The discount rate, future salary and benefits, future medical costs, if any, including cost of administering claims and payments, the expected rate of return on plan assets, yan. So, ito yung mga variables na kino-consider para malaman nyo magkano yung kailangan i-contribute sa premium. Yan yung actuarial assumptions. Ito yan. Dito yan sila. Ito yung contribution para sa premium. Ito yung mga variables. Now, many of those variables are uncertain. So, actuary, trabaho niya, bigyan ng value yung mga uncertain variables na yun. Para pag mag-compute na sa para may pang-compute kayo sa magkano yung magiging contribution para sa retirement benefit ng employee mo. Ganun yun. So, actuarial assumptions, ganyan sabi kanina, discount rate, the rate used to discount post-employment benefits obligations shall be determined by reference to market yields at the end of the reporting period on high-quality corporate bonds. Yan yung magiging basis ng rate sa discount rate mo, so mag-present value ka dyan. In countries where there is no deep market in such bonds, the market yields at the end of the reporting period on government bonds shall be used. So, may hierarchy. Kung may high quality corporate bonds, yun ang gamitin. Pag wala, punta kayo sa government bonds. Ito na yung pangatlong category ng employee benefits, si other long-term employee benefits. So, other long-term employee benefits are employee benefits other than post-employment benefits and termination benefits that are due to be settled beyond 12 months. Kaya long-term siya pero other. After the end of the period in which the employee rendered the related services, so end of the reporting period, eto, 12 months. So, after 12 months, long-term na yan siya. Other long-term employee benefits are accounted for using the procedures applicable for a defined benefit plan. However, unlike sa defined benefit plan, all of the components of the net benefit cost are recognized sa profit or loss. So, kasi sa defined benefit plan, di ba, may mga mix siya ng P&L pati ng OCI. Pagdating dito sa other long-term benefits, P&L, profit or loss lahat. So, ito yung mga examples, long-term compensated absences, gaya ng mga sabbatical leave, jubilee or other long service benefits, long-term disability benefits, profit sharing and bonuses payable beyond 12 months after the end of the period in which the employees have rendered the related services. So, sa short term, within 12 months, dito beyond 12 months, deferred compensation payable beyond 12 months after the end of the period in which it is earned. So, eto pag lumampas na, example, yung compensation yung tawag ito, yung accumulating compensation nyo multiple years, diba? Mga 5 years, 6 years. So, yung for the first year of that, yun, short term. Pero yung the remaining yung lumampas na ng 12 months, yun, long term na yun. So, lastly, termination benefits. Termination benefits are employee benefits provided in exchange for the termination of an employee's employment as a result of an entity's decision to terminate an employee's employment before the normal retirement date or an employee's decision to accept an entity's offer of benefits in exchange for the termination of employee. Ito yung mga severance packages yun. Severance packages, baka narinig nyo ito sa news, yung mga, lalo ngayong pandemic. So, since hindi na kaya ng company na i-maintain yung employee, so, bibigyan nyo sila ng option, yung mga severance packages, yung mga marireceive nila pag na-terminate na yung employment nila. Yan, yung 4. Measurement, etc., etc. So, termination benefits are initially and subsequently recognized in accordance with the nature of the employee benefits. If the termination benefits are payable within 12 months, the entity shall account for the termination benefits similarly within short term kasi within 12 months after the reporting period. Kapag naman beyond 12 months after the reporting period, then yung pag-compute sa kanya or pag-account sa kanya similar sa other long-term benefits. However, in the third scenario, if the termination benefits are in substance enhancement to post-employment benefits, the entity shall account for the benefits as post-employment benefits. So, yan yung ating employee benefits. Ngayon, punta tayo sa application of concepts, problem 2 for classroom discussion. Hala sir, sabi niyo sir, hindi tayo magko-computation sa Yun nga, hindi ko kayo bibigyan ng computation problems. Sa intermediate accounting na yan. Ito for illustrative purposes lang. So, ito. Entity A has 20 employees who are each entitled to 1 day paid vacation leave for each month of service rendered. Ngayon, unused vacation leaves are carried forward and can be used in future periods if the current period's entitlement is not used in full. So, that is accumulating compensated balances. Kasi it can be carried forward yung mga unused. So, they're still entitled to that in the future periods. Moreover, employees are entitled to a cash payment for unused entitlement when they leave the entity. So, not only it is accumulating but also vesting. Kasi kahit na umalis na sila company, entitled pa rin sila sa cash payment ng unused nila. All the employees have rendered services throughout the current year and have taken a total of 150 days of vacation leave. So, lahat sila, or out of the 20 employees, they have taken 150 days of vacation leaves. The average daily rate of the employees in the current period is 1K. Oh, daily rate, gabi, 1K. However, a 5% increase in the rate is expected to take effect into the following year. Now, based on Entity A's past experience, the average annual employee turnover rate is 20%. How much will Entity A accrue at the end of the current period for unused entitlement. So, paano computation yan? So, ito no? Letter D ang correct answer. 94,500. Wait lang So, 20 employees. And for each month of service rendered, they're entitled, binigyan sila ng 1 day of paid vacation leave. So, 20 employees, 1 day paid for 12 months. So, yung in-assume 12 months, nag-render sila at least 12 months or for 12 months 1 year. Alam nga, 12 months 1 year. So, 20 times 1. Saan ang calculator natin? 20 times 1 times 12. That's 240. So, per year, the entire employees, yung accumulated na nila is 240 days of paid vacation leaves. Now, for the year, entitled sila doon sa 240 days. Now, for the year, ang nagamit lang is 150 days. Kasi stated 150 lang yung nagamit for the current year. Entitled sila sa 240. So, with that said, yung 240 minus 150, yung 90 na unused paid vacation leaves. And since this is accumulating and vesting, entitled pa rin sila, carried siya sa future periods. So with that said, yung 90 times mo sa 1,000, 90,000. However, next year, magkakaroon ng 5% increase. So you will account for that. So times 1.05, 94,500. So yung 20% employee turnover rate is irrelevant because the employee benefits are monetized. Vesting siya Yeah? Vesting siya. So wala kang pake sa employee turnover rate kasi vesting siya. Kahit pag umalis yung entity sa pag umalis yung employee sa entity, makaka-receive pa rin sila. Oo. Non-vesting, tsaka lang take into account yung employee turnover. So, paano yun? Times yun lang. So, yan 94,500. Sa number 2, under its post-employment benefit plan, entity A agrees to tandaan nyo, defined contribution to. Defined contribution. Under its post-employment benefit plan, entity A agrees to make annual contributions of 500,000 to a retirement fund. When an employee retires, he or she is entitled to a lump sum payment and monthly pension payments will be determined based on the level of contributions and the investment performance of the fund. Now, in 2001, due to cash flow problems, entity A was only able to contribute half of the agreed contributions. In 2002, entity A contributed 900,000 to the fund. How much retirement benefit expense should entity A recognize in 2001 and 2002 respectively? Answer dyan, kita nyo dito, letter D. So, letter D. Bakit sir? Defined contribution yan Defined contribution yan. So, kahit na ano man yung mangyari, yung expense, saan dito yan? Yung retirement benefit expense niya will remain the same because the contribution is defined. So sir, paano yung i-account yung 900 and 250,000? So sa 2001, yung expense niya, 2001 to, yung expense niya will be 500,000. Will be 500,000. However, since required siya magbayad ng 500,000, so may liability pa rin siya of 250,000. Yung natitirang cash, yung cash yan, 250. O ganyan, di ba? So 2001. required siya magbayad ng 500 kasi defined contribution plan yan. So yung expense niya is 500,000. Nga, kahit na nabayaran niya lang is cash 250, the remaining one is liability niya na yan. Ngayon, pagdating ng 2002, yung expense niya, same G's pa rin. 500,000. Ha? 500K pa rin. Ngayon, in this case, since may liability siyang 250, tapos yung nabayaran niya is 900, so paano yan? Debit mo yung liability of 250K. So that is 750 na. Then 750 na yan, so may natitira pang 150. So that is prepaid na. Oo, jump over na yan. Prepaid 150. So add mo yan. 500, 250 plus 150. Tama ba? Oo. 900K. And that is a cash payment of credit cash. Klaro pa man sa picture ko. Credit cash, 900K. Ganyan, di ba? 2001. Required siya magbayad ng 500 sa kanyang plano, contributions. Kaso, kalahati lang yung nabayaran niya. So with that, 500 pa rin yung expense mo. Yung cash, eto, credit. Ngayon, yung remaining, liability mo na yan na required mong bayaran sa future. So that's 250,000 liability. Pagdating ng 2002, okay, marami kang cash available. So 900 binayaran mo sa fund. So expenses of 500 pa rin. Kasi nga, yan yung contribution mo. Defined contribution plan. Then yung liability mo, okay, since nabayaran mo na, okay, debit sa liability, na may excess ka pang 150 out of that 900. Kasi, 500 plus 250 is 750 lang. So, prepaid na yan. Magagamit mo, parang set aside mo for future expenses in this case. Ngayon, credit cash kasi yun yung binayaran mo. So, ganun kasimple. Defined contribution, straightforward, ganyan yan. Napakadali, di ba? Ito naman sa defined benefit natin nagpapahirap ng buhay natin. Don't worry. Sample lang to. Use the following information for the next 3 questions. Information on Entity A's defined benefit plan is as follows. So to, present value of the defined benefit obligation as of January 1, 2001, 2 million. Fair value of the plan assets, January 1, 2001, 1.8. Present value of the DBO, 2,900,000 as of December 31, end of the year. Ito naman, fair value of the plan assets as of the end of the year, 600. Current service cost, actuarial loss, return on plan assets, discount rate. So, paano to? And, so, ang unang tanong, how much is the net defined benefit liability or asset to be presented in Entity A's December 31, 2001 is stated in the financial position? The answer is this one. B. Paano solution? 2.9 present value of DBO minus 2,600,000 fair value of plan assets. So, as you can see, as of December 31, 2001, so ito titingnan mo. Yung defined benefit obligation mo, yung liability mo, mas mataas sa magkano yung funds na available para pambayad sa liability na yan. Sa obligasyon na yan. Yung obligasyon mo is 2.9 million. Kailangan mong kaso yung available funds mo from your plan asset is 2.6 lang. So, may deficit kang 300K. So, that is basic. Tama kasi pag liability hindi siya enclosed sa asset, deficit to deficit. Para klaro lang kasi liability hindi siya enclosed sa isang parenthesis. So, okay, mahilo. Asset enclosed sa parenthesis. Number 4, how much is the component of 2001 defined benefit cost to be recognized in profit or loss? Answer is B. Solution, 400 service cost plus 20,000 net interest. See computation below. And that computation below is this one. So, tanong dito is, how much is the component of the defined benefit cost to be recognized in profit or loss? Kasi tatandaan nyo, itong dalawa lang ang recognize sa profit or loss. Ito, OCI. So, so dito, ang hinahanap natin is yung service cost and yung net interest on the net defined benefit liability or asset kasi sila yung dalawa sa P&L. So 400 kasi current services given, pass interest on the BDO, 2 million beginning 10% yung discount rate mo, interest income on plan assets 10% rin. So 20,000. So B 420,000. Kasi nga, ulitin natin, service cost and the net interest on the net defined benefit liability or asset, P&L yan si dalawa. Si remeasurement lang yung sa OCI. Hence, the question, tandaan nyo, recognize in profit or loss. So, number 5, how much is the component of 2001 defined benefit cost to be recognized sa OCI? Ito naman sa OCI, ito na, 260. Dito ang answer, huwag yung pansinin yan 1, 5 yan dapat. 260. 260. Liability siya. So yan, defined or employee benefits. Let's go to our next topic. Now, let's go to the next part of our discussion, which is accounting for government grants and disclosure of government assistance. PAS 20. So, anong learning objectives natin dito, kapatid? Explain the recognition and measurement ng mga government grants and explain the presentation ng government grants sa ating FS. So, ano ba tong government grants? Now, from the word itself, from the phrase or words itself, government grants. Ito, meaning, ibig sabihin, ito yung mga binibigay ng government sa entity. Oo, binibigay ng government sa entity, mga grants, na kung saan, typically, it is not the normal trading transactions ng entity. For example, mga donations, donation ng lupa, or mga rebates, mga ganun, government grants. Pero according to PAS 20, para may specific definition daw tayo, government grants are assistance received from the government in the form of transfer of resources in exchange for compliance with certain conditions. Now take note, government grants exclude government assistance whose value cannot be reasonably measured or cannot be distinguished from the entity's normal trading operation transactions. Kasi obviously, when it already encompasses the normal trading transactions of the entity, the normal business operations na yan. Like for example, itong si entity, isa sa mga supplier siya, isa sa mga customer niya is si government, bumibili sa kanya ng mga office supply. So that is in normal trading transactions between the entity and the government. Kasi normal business operations yan eh. Oo. So, exclude yan sa definition ng government grants. Another thing to be excluded is those who cannot be reasonably measured. Kasi nga, sa accounting, sa FAR natin, siyempre nire-recognize lang na natin kapag it can be reasonably measured. Na-discuss natin yan sa lecture video number 2 under Conceptual framework. Diba? Yung mga assets na kailangan reasonably measured para meron ka talaga malagay na definite amount sa iyong FS. So, yan. Government grants, assistance na na-receive sa government in exchange for compliance with certain conditions, pero exclude mo yung those who cannot be reasonably measured kasi nga, we're talking about accounting, kailangan reasonably measured yan para ma-account mo. And second, those who cannot be distinguished from the entity's normal trading operations kasi business operations yan eh. Oo. Pag ikaw supplier, government mo customer, mahirap na i-distinguish, di ba? Bibili siya ng office supply, etc. etc. Now, with that said, anong mga examples ng government grant? Na itong government grant, sa mga accounting topics, isa to sa mga madadali lang. Chill lang to si government grants. Receipt of cash, ito mga examples siya. Receipt of cash, land, or other non-cash assets from the government subject to compliance with certain conditions. Ito, mga donations, o like for example, grant of 100,000 pesos. Ang condition, you will use that for the benefit of the community. Di ba ganun? Yung mga customers mo dapat, yung mga magsasaka, di ba, baka supplier ka, So, bibigyan ka ng government grant of 100,000 pesos. Pero, you will use that para para sa, you will use that with a condition na yung mga magiging customer mo, mga magsasaka. Di ba ganun? Government grant or land, kung saan dyan ka magtatayo ng building, kung saan yung operations sa factory mo, with a condition na yung mga i-hire mo is those people within the area lang. Yeah. Condition yon. Compliance to certain condition. Receipt of financial aid in case of loss from a calamity. Forgiveness of existing loan by the government. Ito, yung ginawa ng DBP sa Lopez Group. So, kung nagfa-follow kayo ng news, forgiveness of loan ginawa ng DBP sa Lopez Group. Kung saan yun yung pinag-aawayan nila ngayon. If it is if it is reasonable daw. Another, benefit of a government loan with below market rate of interest. Example, the current rate ng market is 12%. Pero binigyan ka ng government loan, tapos yung rate mo doon, yung interest rate nyo na pinag-usapan is 6% lang. So that is below the market rate of interest. Then yung difference nun, yun yung magiging government grant. Kasi, swerte, ang market 12% ang interest rate. Pero sa'yo, binigay lang ng government for 6%. Yeah? Good for you. However, these are ito naman, yes, these are benefits from the government, but you cannot consider them as government grants, sabi ng standard. Yung mga tax benefit, like example, naging deductible yan para sa'yo, or naging exempted ka, kasi na mo yung compliance. Pag tax benefit, hindi pwede. Pre-technical or marketing advice, then provision of guarantees, then yung example, yung sa loans na ginawa ni Dennis Uy, yung sa kanyang company. Yung iba doon, guarantor si government. Yung iba doon, guarantor si government. However, you cannot consider that as government grants. Government procurement policy that is responsible for a portion of the entity sale. Of course, because that is entities normal trading transactions na yan. Business operations na yan. Hindi na yan sakop ng government grant. Public improvements that benefit the entire community. Yun, mga roads, binigyan kayo ng roads, o naglagay ng bridge. Hindi yun, public works yun eh. Hindi yun makakonsider as government grants. So yan, government grants, mga things na hindi considered to be government grants. Now, we're talking about accounting. How are we going to recognize these government grants? Government grants are recognized if there is reasonable assurance that una, the attached conditions will be complied with. Ibig sabihin, kung may mga conditions man yan, kasi meron yan conditional and unconditional. Pero kung may mga conditions yan, tapos na-assess nyo naman na okay, makakomply naman, okay, reasonably assurance, ma-assess nyo na you can be reasonably assured na makakomply nyo yan, okay, goods. And yan, ibig sabihin, yung dalawang conditions na yan, dalawang requisites na yan, dapat present. And the grants will be received. So yan, reasonable assurance, mag-assessment kayo dyan. Classification of government grants according to attached conditions. So may dalawa tayo dyan. Grants related to assets and grants related to income. Now, grants related to assets. Ito yung mga grants whose primary condition is that an entity qualifying for them should purchase, construct, or otherwise acquire long-term assets. For example, you are given cash. Kung saan, cash is an asset. Sorry. Nagising tuloy yung pusa. Yung cash is an asset. Sabi dito, yung cash, you will use that cash to form an investment to benefit the magsasaka in your area. That is the condition that cash yung binigay sa'yo. Or a land. You will be given a land. Kung saan yung land na yun, magtatayo ka ng building. Kung saan yung building na yun, gagawin yung storage ng mga crops ng farmers. That is the condition. That is a grant related to asset. Grants related to income, sabi lang dito, grants other than those related to asset. Yan yung sabi ni standard, follow na natin. Initial measurement, monetary grants, meron rin tayong tatawag na non-monetary grants. Monetary grants are measured at the amount of cash received. Kasi nga, monetary, pera pinag-usapan natin. So, are measured at the amount of cash received kapag cash yung na-receive mo. Another is, fair value of amount receivable, or carrying amount of loan payable to government for which repayment is forgiven, or discount on loan payable to government at a below market rate of interest. So, yan yung measurement kapag monetary grants. Cash, receivable, loan payables. Paano pag non-monetary grants? Example, yung mga land and other resources. So usually mga non-cash asset yan eh. Mga non-cash asset. These are measured of or non-cash asset, non-current asset, di ba? These non-monetary grants are measured at fair value of the non-monetary asset received. Alternatively, kapag walang then you can use the nominal amount or zero plus direct cost incurred in preparing the asset for its intended use. So yan, initial measurement. So more on theories tong si government grant eh. Kapag itatanong to sa board exam, theories to tanong sa kanya. Kasi yung problem solving hindi naman ganun ka-complicated, so hindi lalabas sa board exam. So with that, what is the accounting policy for government grants? Though the main concept in accounting for government grants is the matching. Oo, matching concept. Ano tong si matching concept? It means that the government grant is recognized as income as the entity recognizes as expense the related costs for which the grant is intended to compensate. Like for example, you were given money to build a building. Oo, binigyan ka ng pera to build a building. Na yung expense na makukuha mo dyan from the building is the depreciation expense. So, until na matapos yung building, until na mag-recognize ka ng depreciation expense, hindi mo i-recognize as income yung government grant. Parang ganon. So, the moment na nag-recognize ka na ng depreciation expense on that building, that's the moment you are going to recognize the income from that government grant. So, yun. Kapag hindi ka magre-recognize ng expense, wala kang i-recognize na income. Pag nag-start ka nang mag-recognize ng expense, tsaka ka lang mag-start mag-recognize ng income. Yun yung matching principle. Matching principle. Presentation of government grants related to assets. Government grants related to assets are presented in the statement of financial position. Either by gross presentation, the grant is presented as deferred income, liability, or net presentation, the grant is deducted when computing for the carrying amount of the asset. So, if you can see sa book nyo, nandyan yung example. Anong basically ng gross presentation, net presentation? Sa gross presentation, dinidiffer mo pa yan. Ibig sabihin, kasama pa yan sa value. Pero yung net presentation, ni-net mo na. May example naman yan later on. Ito, pag-asset. Ito, pag-income. Grants related to income are sometimes presented in the income statement. Ito naman, kasi income Ito, asset. So, sa balance sheet natin to, sa statement of financial position. Pero ito, sa income statement to, kasi we're talking about the grants related to income. So, pagdating sa grants related to income, sometimes presented sa income statement either by gross presentation, the grant is presented separately or under a general heading such as other income. May example naman dyan sa book nyo. Pero don't worry, theories tayo dito. Net presentation, the grant is deducted in reporting the related expense. Pag net, pag gross. Don't worry, may example naman later para mas ma-explain ng maayos. Repayment of government grants. Paano pag nagkaroon ng situation kung saan hindi na makakomply ni entity yung condition provided sa grant? Like for example, ang sabi sa grant, ang condition, dapat si entity magkaroon ng at least 30% ng kanyang, at least 50% ng kanyang sales is to the farming community surrounding the factory. Yun sabi niya, yun yung condition sa government grant. Now, however, after the assessment, nakita na 40% lang ng total sales ni entity ang napunta or ang para sa farming community around the factory. So, yun, in that case, there's a breach of the condition. Hindi natupad ni entity yung condition sa government grant. In that case, ibabalik niya kay government yung grant. Repayment of government grants yun. So, a government grant that becomes prepayable is accounted for as a change in accounting estimate that is treated prospectively under PAS 8. So, ito, application of concepts tayo. So, madali lang itong government grants. Measurement. Non-monetary grants are measured at fair value. Fair value A, B, C, or D. Ang answer dyan is D. Kasi dito naman, fair value or alternatively nominal zero amount. We didn't start a fire. So, number 2, ito. Solving sa number 2, 3, 4. Use the following information for the next 3 questions. So, noong January 1, 2001, Entity A received land with the fair value of 200,000 from the government. Kung saan, ang condition is a construction of a building on the lot. So, yun yung binigyan siya ng land, 200,000 pesos, condition, magtayo siya ng building. Entity A started immediately the construction and it was completed after 1 year, December 31, 2001, for a total cost of 1 million peso. Ngayon, ito na. Ito yung cost ng building. Yeah? Example natin kanina. Ito yung cost na or yung fair value ng land. Then, the building has an estimated useful life of 10 years and a zero residual value. So, walang residual value when we compute with the depreciation expense. And in this case, straight line method to kasi the problem is silent, 10 years, zero residual value. So, yung question number 2. How much the income from the government grant in 2001 and 2002 respectively? Anong tamang sagot dyan, kapatid? Correct answer, letter C. Bakit letter C? Kasi tingnan nyo. Anong sabi natin sa matching principle? Magre-recognize ka lang ng income kapag nag-recognize ka na ng expense in relation to the grant. In this case, kailan nag-start yung construction? January 1, 2001. Kailan nag-end? December 31, 2001. Ngayon, in that time, kino-construct pa yung building eh. Dinipreciate mo na ba yung building? Hindi, kasi hindi pa nga tapos eh. Di ba sabi natin sa past 16, magre-recognize ka lang ng depreciation expense the moment na kumpleto na yung asset, ginagamit mo na. Di ba? In this case, hindi pa. Nung December 31, 2001, wala pang nangyari dyan eh. So, zero. Hindi mo i-recognize yung matching mo. On 2002, ano nangyari? Tapos na yung building oh. Nag-start ka ng gamitin yan January 1, 2002. So, pagka-end ng current ng 2002 accounting period, nag-start ka ng mag-recognize ng depreciation expense. So, since nag-start ka na mag-recognize ng depreciation expense, anong mangyayari dyan? Magre-recognize ka rin ng income. Matching principle. In that case, ito na yun. Yung 200,000, ito, yung grant na yan, divide mo sa 10 years. So, similar, no? Proportionate. Same yung pag-recognize ng expense sa pag-recognize ng income. Same yung way ng pag-recognize ng expense sa pag-recognize ng income. So, in that case, 20,000. O, kasi 10 years din yung pag-recognize, matching principle nga. Yung pag-recognize mo ng expense is straight line method 10 years. Ganun rin ang pag-recognize mo ng income. Straight line 10 years. So, yun. So, 20,000. Oh. Ngayon, number 3. Saan number 3? Number 3. How much is the carrying amount of the building on December 31, 2002 under the following presentation? So, yun. Gross presentation and net presentation. So, pinag-usapan natin dito is the in relation to the asset kasi building. Oh. So, ang tanong, carrying amount niya. Correct answer is letter B. Kasi kung makita nyo, circle natin. Di ba anong sabi sa asset to, no? Gross presentation, the grant is presented as deferred income liability. Pagdating sa net presentation, the grant is deducted when computing for the carrying amount. Deducted when computing for the carrying amount. So, in this case, so as you can see, sa gross presentation, 1 million yung value ng building. 9 out of 10 na 9 divided by 10, yan yung carrying amount niya kasi mayroon ng accumulated depreciation, gross. So, yung tawag ito, the grant is presented as deferred income liability. Deferred income liability. Kasi yung 200,000, ganyan din yung mangyari. Paano ba? 200,000. Klaro ba? Zoom natin. 200,000 times 1 divided by 10. So, yung amount yan is 20,000. Diba? Yan pala yung na-recognize. However, yung income niyan, na ano pa, na-defer, diba? So, 200,000, 9 times. So, 20,000 pa lang yung nare-recognize na income. 180,000 pa yung natitira. Parang ganun. Same dito. Now, pagdating sa net presentation, tinanggal mo na yung 200,000, net na agad. Net na agad. So, kaya 720 yung lumabas na carrying amount. Net na agad. Anong reason yan, sir? Pag magre-repayment kasi, mas madali yung gross presentation kasi i-reverse mo na lang. Wala ka nang gagawing solve kasi given na yun agad. Pagdating sa net, yun, doon ka pa magsusolve kasi kailangan mong i-work back. Pero pagdating ang gross presentation, tapos mag-repayment ka, di ba? Kailangan mo mag-repayment, madali lang. Oo. Kasi given na agad yan sa given na yun agad yung amount, yung account, reverse mo na lang yun. Pagdating sa net presentation, if I remember correctly, doon ka pa magsusolve. Atong chat. Okay, kinagat ako ng langgam. Ito sinalcohol ko. Sarap. Okay. Yun yung sa net presentation. Ngayon, let's go to number 4. How much is the depreciation expense recognized in 2003 under the following presentations? Letter A. 180,000. Ito, since ito na yung carrying amount, carrying amount, yeah? Yung pag sa kanya ng depreciation expense, ito rin. Gross sense yan, 100 kasi, 900 plus 100, 1 million. Dito naman, net presentation, 1 million minus 200K, divided by 10, 80K, 720 plus 80, so, 800, di ba? So, ganyan naman basic lang talaga si government grant. So, wag niya masyadong problemahin. Number 5. On January 1, 2001, NTTA receives a financial aid from the government amounting to 1 million peso as a compensation for its losses. It has incurred a recent calamity. How much the income from the government grant will NTTA recognize in 2001? So, matching principle, yes, 1 million. Kasi bakit matching principle? Losses Nagkaroon na ng losses. So, since nagkaroon na ng losses, nangyari na. So, yung na-receive na 1 million government grant, income na agad. Kasi yung matching principle yung minamatch ni 1 million peso government grant income, nangyari na. So, i-recognize mo na rin siya. I-account mo na rin. So, diba? Ayan, 1 million. So, basic ni government grant. So, with that, let's go to our next topic. Okay. Ngayon, dito naman tayo Ngayon, dito naman tayo sa next discussion natin, the effects of changes in foreign exchange rates, PAS 21. Ngayon, itong PAS 21, hindi nyo, sa advanced accounting nyo ito ma-encounter, particularly sa accounting for business combinations, BAPE 7. So, third year nyo to, first sem. Kakaturo ko lang nito sa mga third years ngayon, last semester, itong PAS 21. Under to sa accounting for business combinations. Yung green book ni Zeus pa rin. Kasi nga, in-depth discussion, undergrad discussion to. Ito. Hindi to under intermediate accounting, under to sa advanced accounting. So ito, let's go, PAS 21. Anong objectives natin dito? Una, differentiate between the two ways of conducting foreign activities. Kasi dito, with how dynamic the global economy is, mayroong mga certain transactions na hindi mo maiwasan na you will have to transact outside of the country. So with that, those are called foreign activities. So when you transact with foreign activities, chances are, or it is very sure that you will use foreign currency. You will use foreign exchange rates. So yan, the new objectives. With that, pangalawa, state the initial and subsequent measurement of foreign currency transactions. Pangatlo, describe the procedures in translating financial statements into presentation currency. Now, itong PS21, this is a complex topic. Kaya nga later pa to tinuturo. Third year pa. So, ngayon, tiris lang tayo. Oh, of course, lahat naman sa CFAS natin, tiris lang yan. Pero, medyo complex topic to. So, kailangan nyo mapagdaanan nyo muna yung mga intermediate accounting subjects nyo bago kayo pumasok dito sa advanced accounting subjects. Kasi nga, third year pa to eh. First year pa lang kayo ngayon. Ito, foreign currency na to eh. Kaya nga, advanced accounting. Now, there are two ways of conducting foreign activities. Una is the foreign currency transactions, kung saan individual entities often enter into transactions in a foreign currency. A very good example of that is import-export, di ba? Individual entities often enter into transactions sa foreign currency. Import, bibili ka ng gamit from outside the Philippines. So, ang ibabayad mo, foreign currency. Export, mag-export ka, maglalabas ka ng product outside of the Philippines. Ang marireceive mo, foreign currency. Yeah, ganun. Pangalawa is the foreign operation. Now, groups often include overseas entity. Ito na yung mga may branches ba? Meron ka mga branches on other countries. No? May mga branches ka on other countries. Now, pagdating ng end of the year, yung operations ng branches mo from the other countries, kailangan mo i-consolidate yan. Isasama mo yan sa FS mo. Being the head company, the mother company. So with that, papasok talaga yung foreign operations, foreign reporting dyan. Kasi, siyempre, other country yung operations ng isang branch mo eh. So, ang gagamitin niyang currency sa kanyang FS is kung saan siya nag-ooperate. Now, the problem arises in this case is kapag itatransfer niya na sa'yo, ipapasa niya sa'yo yung kanyang FS, kung saan yung currency ng FS doon is the currency of the place where the branch is operating. So, pag napunta na yan sa'yo, para i-consolidate mo, being the mother company, so, paano mo yan siya i-translate to your currency? Kasi, ibang bansa kayo dalawa eh. So, those are the two ways of conducting foreign activities which gives rise to the issue of how you are going to account that. And, punta tayo dito sa two main accounting issues, kapatid. Exchange rates are constantly changing. Of course, it is very volatile. Lalo na pag there's certain issues o mga problema, volatile yung foreign exchanges natin meron. Papalit-palit yan. Depende sa depende sa nangyayari. Maraming variables, yeah? So with that, since papalit-palit yan, mahirap magkaroon or mahirap i-follow yung consistency principle. Di ba? Dapat sa accounting, consistent tayo. So, yan yung nagiging issue when foreign transactions in foreign currency are being included in the FS because of the exchange rates are constantly changing. Nature talaga ng exchange rates eh. Therefore, the principal issues for accounting for foreign activities are determining with which exchange rates anong exchange rate ang gagamitin mo and how to report the effects of changes in exchange rates in the FS. So, functional currency. Itong functional currency, when preparing FS, a reporting entity must identify its functional currency. Ngayon, ano ba itong functional currency na to? Functional currency is the currency of the primary economic environment in which the entity operates. So, if that company is operating in the Philippines, primary operating in the Philippines, then the functional currency that the entity have is the Philippine currency, the Philippine peso. Ngayon, may tinatawag rin tayong presentation currency. Now, on the other hand, the presentation currency is a currency that is used in your financial statements. Now, there are times that the functional currency is different from the presentation currency. Like for example, yung sinabi ko, yung example natin. Nasa ibang bansa, let's say, Philippine company ka. Mother company, Philippine. Tapos may branch ka sa Korea. May branch ka sa Korea. Now, yung functional currency ng branch na yun sa Korea is won. Kasi yung primary economic activity doon eh. Won ang ginagamit nila doon, Korean won. So, yun yung functional currency niya. However, since branch siya, so kailangan niyang ibigay sa yung kanyang FS yung kanyang FS para i-consolidate yan. Kasi kailangan niya sa reporting. Consolidation of financial statements, advanced accounting rin yan. Kung saan, basically, ikaw yung mother company, you have the obligation to consolidate, i-combine yung FS nyo. Ngayon, being the Philippine mother company, so ang functional currency mo is Philippine peso, and since nasa Pilipinas ka, ang presentation currency mo is Philippine peso rin. Kasi yung branch mo, Korean won yung kanyang functional currency. Ngayon, kung magka-consolidate ka na ng iyong financial statements, so ngayon, yung Korean won FS ng branch mo, kailangan mo ngayong i-translate into Philippine peso. Oo, para sa iyong presentation currency. So yun dun. Yun yung problema pagdating dito sa foreign operations. Yun, kikita nyo, naging klaro na. Dahil sa different foreign currency, because of the different exchange rates, nagkakaroon tayo ng issue. Ngayon, the primary economic environment in which an entity operates is normally the one which it primarily generates and expends cash. Ito, additional factors in determining functional currency. Primary factors, an entity's functional currency is the currency that mainly influences its sales price. Kung peso yan, 10 peso kada isang pack ng Maggi, gano'n, diba? Cost of goods sold and cost of services provided. The secondary factors to consider para malaman mo kung ano yung functional currencies, the currency in which funds from financing activities are generated. Example, saan ka nangungutang? Nangungutang ka sa Philippine Bank. So, Philippine peso yan, financing activities. The currency in which receipts from operating activities are usually retained. So, yan, factors in determining functional currency. Foreign currency transactions. Now, let's go to the first way of conducting foreign activities, foreign currency transactions. Initial recognition. So, paano natin siya nire-recognize sa FS natin? The foreign currency amount is translated at the spot exchange rate at the date of transaction. Spot exchange rate meaning the current rate. Ganun lang yan. Kung nung December 31, the exchange rate for a dollar for Philippine peso is 49 tawag dito. Kung nung January 15, the spot exchange rate for $1 is 49 pesos, yeah? 49 pesos. Yun yung spot exchange rate at that date. Kasi may tinatawag rin tayong closing rate kung saan yun yung rate as of the end of the year. December 31, 2001, may tinatawag rin tayong current rate, may tinatawag rin tayong average rate. Oo. So pagdating nyo sa advanced accounting, makikita nyo yun na for this transaction, gagamit ka ng spot exchange rate. For this transaction, average rate ang gagamitin mo. For this account, ang gagamitin mo is the closing rate. So, yan. Those are the complexities na or mechanics na kailangan nyo malaman when pagdating nyo sa advanced accounting for this topic. Now, subsequent recognition. But in this case, since we're talking about transactions, buy and sell, parang import-export, spot exchanges lang ginagamit natin. Bakit? So yung mga sinasabi nyo, sir, na closing, Now, sa subsequent recognition, ito naman, initial kasi ito eh. The moment it happened. Pagdating sa subsequent recognition, at the end of each reporting period, foreign currency monetary items are retranslated using the closing rate. Non-monetary items are measured at the historical cost in a foreign currency shall be translated using the exchange rate at the date of transaction, and the non-monetary items that are measured at fair value in a foreign currency shall be translated using the exchange rates at the date when the fair value was. Okay, medyo nakat yung bid. So, saan sabi ko? Ang makikita nyo dito, may mga terms. Monetary items, non-monetary items, and another non-monetary items. Now, sabi dito, monetary items, retranslated siya, subsequent recognition, closing rate. Sa, tawag dito, sa non-monetary items that are measured at historical cost in a foreign currency, retranslated siya, subsequent recognition, sa exchange rate at the date of transaction, ito, pag yung non-monetary item are measured at fair value in a foreign currency transaction, retranslated siya sa at the date when the fair value is determined. Now, ano nga ba tong monetary items? Ano nga ba tong non-monetary items? Ano ba to sila? Hindi ko rin alam. De, joke lang. So, monetary items, these are units of currency held and assets na Monetary items are units of currency held and assets and liabilities to be received or paid in a fixed or determinable amount. Now, kung makikita nyo dyan sa book ni Zeus, di ba? Nakalagay dyan yung mga examples ng monetary assets, di ba? Meron tayong monetary assets and meron tayong mga examples ng monetary items, di ba? Meron tayong mga monetary assets and mga monetary assets and monetary liabilities. Now, itong mga monetary assets and monetary liabilities, basically, their prices or their values are not reference to future prices of specific goods or services. Pera ba? Parang pera ba talaga? Oh? Fixed or determinable amounts. Meaning, hindi sila pabago-bago. So, yung cash, receivables, these are fixed. Ngayon, pagdating sa non-monetary assets, lahat ng hindi monetary asset other than monetary items except retained earnings. Kasi ang retained earnings is neither monetary or non-monetary. Kasi siya ay isang residual amount, balancing figure siya after restatement. Kasi sa kanya pinapataw sa kanya binabagsak yung mga restatements. So yan natandaan, monetary items may fixed or determinable amount. Tapos nahati siya sa monetary assets and monetary liabilities. Basically, hindi volatile, hindi pa bago-bago yung kanyang value. Oo, kaya nga fixed or determinable eh. And makikita nyo sa mga examples yan, ganun siya. Ngayon, ang non-monetary items, ito yung mga they are not fixed or determinable, basta opposite siya ni monetary items. So, lahat ng hindi monetary items are considered non-monetary. May exception, retained earnings. Kasi si retained earnings, neither monetary, nor non-monetary. Bakit? Retained earnings is a balancing figure. Balancing figure yan siya after restatement. So, yan lang. Recognition of exchange differences when a foreign currency transaction occurred in one period and settled in another period, the exchange difference between the transaction date and the end of the reporting period is recognized in the period of transaction, while the exchange difference between the end of the previous reporting period and the date of settlement is recognized in the period of settlement. Sir, paano yan, sir? Ganito yan ang presentation dyan. Or ganito yung, ganito yung, tawag dito? Yung visualization dyan. Ito ang timeline. Ito yung end of the reporting period. Let's say nagkaroon ka ng transaction in foreign currency, foreign exchange, on this date. Ngayon, sabi dito, the exchange difference between the transaction date and the end of the reporting period is recognized in the period of transaction. So, ito yung period of transaction. Ito yun. Ngayon, siyempre, gaya na sabi natin, di ba, pabago-bagong exchange rates. So, from this transaction date to the end of the reporting period, there are chances na iba yung or different yung exchange rates. So, let's say, for example, 49 pesos ang $1 dito sa date of transaction. Pagdating sa end of the reporting period, 52 na. 52 na. Na, di ba? May 3 pesos difference, so you will account for that difference. Ngayon, yung date of settlement, next year, settlement. Ngayon, pagdating ng date of settlement, let's say 50 pesos na yung value ng $1. So, yan yung sinasabi dito. The exchange difference between the end of the previous reporting period, ito, and the date of settlement is recognized in the period of settlement. Ito na. So, yan yung visualization yan. Date of transaction, end of the reporting period, yung exchange difference, you will recognize that. Period of transaction. Ngayon, next year, isa-settlement nyo. Magsisettle kayo. Magbabayaran kayo. So, ito yun. The exchange difference between the end of the previous reporting period, ito. And the date of settlement, ito. Magre-recognize ka dyan ng exchange difference. Period of settlement. Dito, 49.52. Yan, magre-recognize ka. Paano pag 52.52? Di zero yung exchange difference. Pero pag ito, 49.52, mag-recognize ka talaga. Ito, 52.50. O yeah, magre-recognize ka rin ng exchange difference. Now, naglagay ng isang dot dito. When a foreign currency transaction occurred and settled in the same period, all the exchange difference is recognized in that period. So, let's say, for example, 1 year lang to. Date of settlement, ito yung end of reporting period. Nagkaroon ka ng transaction dito. Sinettle nyo rin within 1 month. O, dito lang. O, yung exchange difference between the two, okay lang. So, yan yan yung point sa foreign transactions. Yan yung point sa foreign transactions. Foreign currency transactions. Yan yung point nito. Ito, basically, ito yung foreign currency transactions. Ito yung pino-point out niya. Itong graph na to. Date of transaction, end of reporting period, exchange difference, hanapin mo. Date of reporting, end of the reporting period, date of settlement, exchange difference, hanapin mo. Then, you will find the net. O, hanapin mo yung net. Net gain or net loss. Net gain or net loss. So, pag hanapin yung net gain or net loss, magtatanungin kayo sa board, ano yung net gain or net loss from this to this. Ganyan. Simple lang. Ngayon, let's go to the second way. Foreign operations. Now, ito sa foreign operations, basically, bibigyan kayo ng basahin muna natin. Saan yun? A foreign operation is an entity that is a subsidiary, associate, joint venture, or a branch of a reporting entity. Thus, activities of which are based or conducted in a country or currency other than those the reporting entity. Gaya, example natin kanina, ikaw yung mother company, nasa PH ka. Ikaw yung mother company. So, may mga branches ka outside. Yung ibang branch mo sa US, Australia, India, di ba? So, with that, anong magiging issue? Etong mga branches mo or let's say subsidiaries mo, nasa ibang bansa. So, yung functional currency nila is yung currency kung saan sila nag-ooperate. Now, however, since you're the mother entity, you're the parent entity, yun yung tawag, parent. You're the parent entity. You have the obligation to consolidate. Oo. Yung FS ng lahat na yan. Na paano yun? Ikaw, Philippines ka. Functional currency mo, peso. Presentation currency mo is peso rin. Sila functional currency nila, dollars, Australian dollars, rupees. Yeah? So, yan yung problema ngayon. Ita-translate mo yan sila into Philippine peso kasi yun yung presentation currency. So, yun yung nagiging issue dito sa foreign operations. Saan yun? Translation to the presentation currency. Assets and liabilities are, Assets and liabilities are translated at the closing rate. Meaning, yung kung December 31, yung ending, tapos kung ano yung rate doon, yun yung closing rate. At the date of statement of the FS, so closing rate. Tandaan nyo ito yung masasabi ko kanina, na ano yung mga rates na ginagamit. Meron ito tawag na spot rate, average rate, may average rate, closing rate. Kasi depende sa account yung rate na gagamitin. In this case, assets and liabilities, closing rate ang gagamitin mo. Income and expenses, including OCI, are translated at spot exchange rate at the date of transactions. At the date of transactions. Na ang problema dito, income, expenses, and OCI, lalo na pag maraming transactions na nangyari dyan, voluminous yan. Maramihan. So, medyo impractical na gagamitin mo yung at the date of the transaction. Lalo na pag maramihang transaction yan. Like, on this day, ito yung exchange rate. Next day, iba naman yung exchange rate. May transaction ka dyan. Next day, may transaction ka naman. Tapos iba naman yung exchange rate. So, medyo impractical, di ba? Lalo na pag maraming transactions. Now, sabi dito, for practical reasons, average rates for a period may be used if they provide a more reasonable approximation of the spot rates when the transaction took place. However, if exchange rates fluctuate significantly, the use of the average rate is inappropriate. Kasi nga, magandang gumamit ang average kapag consistent yan, walang masyadong fluctuation. Kaya nga, walang outlier, maganda gumamit ng average. Pero pag nagkaroon ng fluctuations, significant fluctuations, may mga outlier na, di ba? Hindi na maganda gumamit ng average rate. So, take note of that lang. So, dito, income expenses and yung mga OCI, spot exchange rate ang ginagamit, pero dahil sa impracticality, average rate. But take note, when using average rate, make sure na walang significant fluctuations kasi nawawala yung value ng average. Yeah? Nadi-distort, kumbaga. And the resulting exchange difference is recognized sa OCI. OCI, Other Comprehensive Income. So, application of concepts tayo. Don't worry, hindi ako magbibigay sa inyo ng problems. Tiris lang. Pero ito for illustrative purposes. So, use the following information for the next two questions. Entity A, agay. Entity A. On December 1, 2001, Entity A, sales, goods, and services. Sales goods. Entity A sells goods to Entity B on credit for a total sale price of 1,000 peso. Entity A, B, nabubulol tayo. Balik. Entity A sells goods to Entity B on credit for a total, on credit, so ibig sabihin sa future babayaran, for a total sale price of $1,000. Entity B settles the account on January 6. Ngayon, si Entity A's functional currency is the Philippine peso. So, makaka-receive siya ng $1,000, pero yung functional currency ni Entity A is peso, Philippine peso. Ngayon, the relevant exchange rates are as follows. Noong December 1, 2001, $50. 50 pesos, $1. Noong after 1 month, naging 52 pesos per $1. Pagdating ng date of settlement, 47 to $1 na lang. So, to, date of transaction, date of settlement, end of the reporting period, date of settlement. So, following this, date of transaction, end of the reporting period, date of settlement, exchange difference, period of transaction, exchange difference, periods of settlement. So in that case, unang tanong, how much is the foreign exchange gain or loss to be recognized by Entity A on December 31, 2001? So ang answer dyan, ito, 52 minus 50. Paano ang illustration yan? Tingnan nyo dito, tingnan nyo rin dito yung ano. Tingnan nyo rin dito kung ano yung position ni entity. Kung siya yung seller o kung siya yung buyer. Mahalaga rin tingnan dito para malaman mo if gain or loss yun. In this case, si entity yung seller. So, ibig sabihin, benefit sa kanya kapag mataas yung exchange rate. Benefit sa kanya kapag mataas yung exchange rate. Kasi mas malaki yung matatanggap niya. Ngayon, kapag mas mababa yung exchange rate, since siya yung seller dito, lugi siya. Or hindi maganda yung benefit sa kanya. On the other hand, kapag si Entity A, example lang siya yung buyer, siya yung bumili, bumili siya ng gamit or from the outside of the Philippines. So, ano ang benefit sa kanya? Mataas na exchange rate or mababa? Ang benefit sa kanya, opposite ni seller, sa seller point of view. Pag buyer siya, ang benefit sa kanya is kapag mababa yung exchange rate. Kasi mas konti yung ilalabas yung pera. Ngayon, kapag mas mataas yung exchange rate, lugi siya. Lugi siya kasi mas mataas yung ilalabas yung pera para makabayad lang sa exchange rate. So, tingnan nyo yung point of view kung sino si entity dito. In this case, si entity is the seller. So, anong yan? Anong interpretation yan? Kapag mas mataas yung exchange rate, ginansya siya. Good sa kanya, benefit sa kanya. Pero pag mababa, loss sa kanya. Okay? Importante to take note yan pagdating sa foreign currency transactions. So, how much is the foreign exchange gain or loss to be recognized by Entity A on December 31? So, ito period of transaction to. So from this to this yan O from this to this, from this to this. So, ang sagot, letter A, that is a gain. Bakit? Tingnan mo, nung date of transaction, 50 pesos lang yung marireceive niya. Times 1,000, that is 50,000. However, pagdating ng December 31, 2001, Diyos ko, tumaas yung exchange rate. So, since ang seller, ginansya siya. Mas malaki yung marireceive niya. Magkano? 52,000. 50K. Ang marireceive niya dito, 52K. Seller siya. Goods for him. So, that is a gain of 2,000 pesos. Now, ito. Paano pag siya yung buyer? Nung December 1, ito pag siya yung buyer, point of view of buyer, nung December 1, ang babayaran niya 50K lang. Pero chicken, pagdating ng after 1 month, tumaas yung kanyang babayaran, 52K. So pag siya yung buyer, loss sa kanya. Pero seller man to siya. So, mas mataas yung marireceive niya, 52K, 2,000 gain. Now, number 2, how much is the foreign exchange gain or loss to be recognized by NTTA on January 6, 2002. Ito naman, period of settlement na. So, 47K. Aba, mukhang may ano dito may problema tayo. D ang correct answer. Bakit? Nung December 31, goods na, masaya na siya. 52K ang marireceive niya. Kaso pagdating ng date of settlement, bumaba ang exchange rate, kapatid. So, nagkaroon siya ng 5,000 loss. 52K na, naging 47 pa. Lugi siya, diba? Bad for him. So, 5K loss yan. Ngayon, let's say, paano pag buyer point of view to? Nung December 31, malungkot ka kasi chicken, sabi mo, 52K babayaran ko. Pero pagdating ng date of settlement, 47K na lang yung babayaran mo, nakatipid ka pa, goods for you. So, pag buyer ka, that will be considered as 5,000 gain. Pero in this case, since seller to, 5,000 loss. Tingnan nyo yung point of view. Mantupusak. So, ito, translation of financial statements. So, si Entity A started operations noong January 1, 2001. Dala naman ng pusa. Dili. Gigi. Paako yan. Agi. Si Entity A started operations noong January 1, 2001. On this date, Entity A, equity, kinakalmot ng paako yan. On this date, Entity A's equity consisted of 2 million share capital, which were also issued on this date. Entity A's functional currency is the Philippine peso. However, yung kanyang presentation currency is Chinese yuan. So the iba yung ano dito. Iba yung functional currency sa presentation currency. Yeah? Functional currency yung ginagamit mo sa operations. Presentation currency is yung ginagamit mo para sa pag-FS mo. So dito, functional currency is the peso, pero yung presentation niya, yung gagamitin niya sa pag-present ng FS niya, ng financial statement niya, is the Chinese yuan. So with that, magkakaroon ng translation. So on the following information was gathered noong December 31, 2001 after a year of operations. So total assets, liabilities, share capital, retained earnings, income, ito naman mga exchange rates. January 1, 2001, historical rate for the share capital. Average rate, saan yan? And the closing rate. So, question, how much is the translated equity? Ang translated equity natin is letter D. Lagay mo natin. Bakit letter D? 10 million yung total assets mo. 5 million yung total liabilities mo. So, yung equity mo is 5 million. So, divide mo by the closing date kasi nga end of the year yan eh. Yan yung sabi. End of the year. So, that is 500,000 yuan. Translated equity. Number 4. Nahilo na ako. How much is the translated profit or loss? Now, in this case, profit or loss ang income. Income and expenses. So, average rate yung gagamitin mo. So, yung 3 million profit, sana yun? 3 million ba yun? 3 million profit. Okay. Divide mo sa average rate. So, 375,000 yuan. Okay. So, ngayon, how much is the foreign exchange difference arising from the translation gain? So, in this case, mag-squeeze ka. Pinasok ng pusa yung mga anak niya. Uy. Maggagamit ka dito ng squeeze. Squeeze me, baby. Ito na. So, sir, complicated man yan. Chill lang. Ito yung answer. So, translated share capital, 2 million. Divided by the historical cost. So, tingnan nyo, share capital. Historical cost ang ginamit. So, dito yan. Ngayon, check mo yung retained earnings mo. Nagkaroon ba ng changes? Wala naman. So, and ang retained earnings, di ba, sabi natin, balancing figure lang siya. So, yan. Wala kang retained earnings at the beginning kasi you just started the operations. Kasi di ba usually ang income mo sa retained earnings yan pinapasok yung mga income or losses. So, since kaka-start pala ng company, wala ka pang retained earnings. And maraming sources ang retained earnings, but you will, like for example, sa share capital, mga share premium, share capital, share premium, yung mga, maraming sources ang retained earnings. Ma-encounter niyan as you go further. But in this case, dito muna tayo focus. Profits to, divide mo, 370k yuan, dito yan siya. Ngayon, yung translated equity mo is 500,000. So, yun nakikita nyo. Ito yung starting na equity. Ito yung starting na equity. Beginning, kumbaga. Ngayon, beginning. Ito yung equities. After it was, pag nung na-translate na, nung beginning, mali tayo dun sa wording. Nung na-translate na. Ngayon, yung translated equity mo is 500,000. So, kailangan analyzation dito. Ngayon, ano yung difference na yun? That is the exchange difference. Yun yung exchange difference. Kasi ito yung original mo. Ngayon, the moment you exchange that to, or you translate that to the Chinese yuan, magkakaroon ng exchange difference. Kasi, tingnan mo, average rate ang ginamit. Yeah? Mayroon ka pang closing rate. So, with that, magkakaroon ng exchange difference. And that exchange difference is, because of the translating, the exchange difference is negative 275,000. Diyan yan pinapasok. Okay? So, ganun lang kasimple. Ano naman kasimple? Ganyan yung concept ng foreign exchange rate. Lagyan natin ng, that is a loss. Kasi, nung nag-exchange ka, loss tiyan mo, loss. Nung nag-exchange ka, nabawasan ka pa, di ba? Nabawasan ka pa. Nagkaroon ka pa ng loss kasi nag-translate ka. So, yan lang si foreign currency transaction. Don't worry, advanced accounting pa to siya, third year nyo. First SEM, accounting for business combination, BAPE 7. With that, next tayo. Next, may tatlong topics pa, no? O may tatlong topics pa. Okay, now let's go to our fourth standard, which is the borrowing cost, PAS 23. Ngayon, ano nga ba itong learning objectives natin ito kay borrowing cost? Now, una, state the core principle under PAS 23, under kay borrowing cost. And pangalawa, compute for borrowing costs that are eligible for capitalization. Now, itong si borrowing cost, if I remember correctly, this is under Intermediate Accounting, Part 1, IA 1 to. So, ano nga ba itong si borrowing cost? So, borrowing costs that are directly attributable to the acquisition, construction, or production of a qualifying asset form part of the cost of that asset. Other borrowing costs are recognized as an expense. So, ano nga ba itong borrowing cost natin, kapatid? From the term borrowing costs, yung mga borrowing costs, magiging part siya ng cost ng asset. Di ba, napag-usapan natin sa PAS 16 natin na there are certain borrowing, may mga interest, may mga interest payments, may mga interest expense na kung saan expense siya agad. However, kapag consider siya as borrowing costs, it will form part of the asset. If you can still remember, PAS 16 natin, di ba? What are the costs of the asset or the PPE? So, ano nga ba itong mas in-depth discussion or mas profound explanation ng borrowing costs? Ganito yan. Borrowing costs are interest and other costs incurred by an entity in connection with the borrowing of funds. Borrowing costs may include interest expense on financial liabilities or lease liabilities computed using the interest method or exchange differences arising from the foreign currency borrowing to the extent that they are regarded as an adjustment to an interest. So, ganyan yung purpose ni borrowing cost. Nangutang ka, for example, nangutang ka. Kasi dalawa yan eh. Nangutang ka. Itong utang mo, liability, sabihin natin. Ngayon, yung utang mo, either whole of that utang or part of that, ginamit mo to produce or construct a qualifying asset. Either whole yan, whole, or part of that, part lang, ginamit mo to produce a qualifying or to construct a qualifying asset. Ngayon, siyempre utang yan. So may mga interest ka na kailangan bayaran dyan. Mga interest, lease liabilities or yung exchange differences, yan. Yan yung mga borrowing costs. Na kung saan yung mga interest expense na yan, yung mga lease liabilities, yung mga exchange differences, that resulted from that utang na kung saan yung utang na yan, yung liability na yan, ginamit mo, whole man or part of that, to construct a qualifying asset to produce a qualifying asset. Now, because yung naging purpose mo for that utang is to produce, in the end, is to construct in the end a qualifying asset, then that interest expense, then that lease liabilities, or then that exchange differences, because of that their nature, because kung saan sila nanggaling, will be part or will form part of the cost of the qualifying asset. Kasi ganun yung nature nila. Nangutang ka to produce that qualifying asset. Nangutang ka to produce that qualifying asset. Na, since yun yung naging nature ng utang mo, yung mga borrowing costs that resulted from that, yung interest expense, yung lease liabilities, yung exchange differences, since yung nature kung saan sila nanggaling is a liability that was used to construct, that was used to build a qualifying asset, then this will be considered as borrowing costs, which will then form part of the asset, of the qualifying asset. Kasi yung nature kung saan sila nanggaling, utang na ginamit pang produce ng qualifying asset. Yun yung nature ng borrowing cost. Hence, sabi dito, it will now form part of the cost of the asset. Yun ang borrowing cost. Yung, ulitin natin. Repetition is the key. Nangutang ka. Kung saan? Saan yun? Kung saan? Either whole of that utang, buong utang na yan, or part of that, ginamit mo to construct, ginamit mo to produce a qualifying asset. Yun yung situation. Now, siyempre utang yan. So, there are certain things that will result from that. Magbabayad ka ng interest or baka lease liability or exchange differences kapag foreign currency borrowing yan. So, yung mga yan, since yung pinanggalingan nila, since they arise out of the liability that was used to produce a qualifying asset, then this will be considered as borrowing costs. And this borrowing costs, borrowing costs. Di ba? Borrowing, ito yung naging cost niya. This borrowing costs will now form part as the cost of the qualifying asset. That is the nature of a borrowing cost. Borrowing cost combined, borrowing, utang, liability, and yung utang, and yung cost that arises from that liability. Ito yun sila. And with that, it will form part of the qualifying asset because of their nature. Yan yung concept ng, yan yung core principle ng isang borrowing cost. Okay, I hope you understand. Qualifying asset. Kasi ito yung ito yung key factor rin eh. Qualifying asset. Qualifying asset is an asset that necessarily takes a substantial period of time to get ready for its intended use or sale. Depending on the circumstances, any of the following may be considered as qualifying asset. Take note, may be considered as a qualifying asset. Nakadepende pa rin yan if it will take substantial period to get it ready for its intended use or sale. Kasi may mga inventories na madali lang i-produce, may mga inventories that would take substantial period for them to be prepared. Yeah? So kaya nakalagay dito, may be qualified to be called as qualifying asset. Dapat, take note, substantial period of time to get them ready for the intended use or sale. Inventories, yung mga matagalang i-produce, di ba? Mga wine, di ba? Matagal yan sila i-produce. Yung mga big, mga buildings, mga real estate, mga buildings, di ba? Mga bill, yung mga tawag ito, house and lot. Matagal mag-produce ng bahay, substantial period of time bago yan matapos. Yun, di ba? Pero in the eyes of the inventories yan kasi yun yung nature of nila, di ba? Mga real estate, inventories yan for them. Kasi yun yung nature nila, binibenta nila yan. Manufacturing plants, ito mga power, mga factory. Matagal yan i-produce, matagal yan i-build, matagal yan i-construct. Power generation facilities, intangible assets. Yung mga experiment para makaproduce ng patents, di ba? Matagal din yan. Investment properties measured under cost model. So, investment properties is natin. So, take note, qualifying asset, substantial period of time to get them ready or intended use. Kaya nga nakalagay ito, may be qualified to call as a qualifying asset kapag substantial period yung kanilang preparation. So, yan yung nature ng borrowing cost. Nangutang ka, ulitin lang natin, repetition, pangatlong repeat. Nangutang ka, yung buong utang na yan or a part of that was used to produce a qualifying asset. Qualifying asset is an asset that takes a substantial period for it to get ready for its intended use or sale. Ngayon, yung borrowing cost, the cost that arises from that liability, interest expenses, liabilities, and exchange differences. Since yung nature na pinanggalingan nila is a liability that was used to produce a qualifying asset, they will then be formed as part of the cost of the qualifying asset because of their nature. Okay, ito yung mga qualifying asset na the following are not considered to be qualifying asset. Mga financial assets, inventories that are manufactured or otherwise produced over a short period of time. Gaya na sabi nito kanina. Assets that are ready for their intended use or sale when acquired are not qualifying asset. Like for example, ikaw yung buy and sell ka ng bahay, di ba? Buy and sell ka ng real estate. So, pag ready na yung real estate na bibilin mo, ito nga, ready na for intended use. Kahit na real estate pa yan, it took time for that to produce, pero bibilihin mo na lang, ready na. So, you cannot consider as qualifying asset. Assets that are routinely manufactured or otherwise produced in large quantities on a repetitive basis and assets measured at fair value. Now, kailan natulog sa pako yung pusa? Kailan ka magko-commence ng capitalization? For example, di ba? Nangutang ka to produce or to construct a building. So, magbaborrowing cost ka kasi ginamit mo yung utang mo, yung liability na yun to produce a building. Now, kailan mo sisimulan na yung interest expense from that liability? Kailan mo sisimulan na i-recognize yan that's borrowing cost? Kailan? Dito na, yan yung pinag-usapan dito sa commencement of capitalization. Kailan mo siya i-recognize as part of the cost of the asset? The capitalization of borrowing cost as part of the cost of the qualifying asset commences on the date when all, so ibig sabihin lahat dapat yan, of the following conditions are met. So, kapag yung isa wala, di mako-consider. So, dapat all. The entity incurs expenditure for the asset. Ibig sabihin, gumastos ka na para sa construction materials and bidding, construction na, labor, nag-down payment ka na. The entity incurs borrowing costs, yun. Nag-ano ka na ng expenses mo, liabilities, foreign exchange differences. And it undertakes activities that are necessary to prepare the assets for its intended use. Like, for example, nag-down payment ka nga, pero hindi pa sinimulan yung pag-construct. So, hindi ka pa pwede mag-commence ng capitalization. So, pero pag nag-down payment ka na, nagsimulan na ng construction, okay, goods. Yung payments mo, construction materials, di ba? So, it undertakes activities that are necessary to prepare the asset for its intended use or activity. So, yan yung tatlong conditions. Ngayon, siyempre, we're talking about substantial period of preparation. So, may mga tendency na masususpend yan. Kasi substantial period na. So, baka mga in-between na, nag-stop yung operation, nag-stop yung construction, nag-stop yung preparation. So, ano mangyayari dyan? Suspension of capitalization. Capitalization of borrowing costs shall be suspended during extended periods of suspension of active development of a qualifying asset. Pag nagkaroon basically ng ang problema. Ngayon, siyempre kinakapitalize mo yung borrowing cost, di ba? Kailan ka mag-stop sa pag-capitalize yan? Dito tayo sa cessation of capitalization. An entity shall cease capitalizing borrowing costs when substantially all the activities necessary to prepare the qualifying asset for its intended use or sale are complete. So pag tapos na, siyempre, wala ka ng purpose para mag-capitalize pa ng borrowing cost, di ba? Kasi tapos na yung intended purpose mo eh. Wala nang logic pag i-continue pa rin. So, pag na-complete na yung qualifying asset, ready na for its intended use or sale, stop ka na mag-capitalize ng borrowing cost. Ito, may dalawang types tayo na ginagawa when capitalizing borrowing cost. Determining borrowing cost eligible for capitalization. Mayroon tayong tinatawag na specific borrowing. Mayroon tayong tinatawag na general borrowing. Bakit yan, di ba? If you can still remember, recently lang yan. Di ba? Anong reason bakit ko sineparate yung whole and part? Kasi may mga utang na kung saan yung buong utang ginagamit mo for that qualifying asset. However, may mga liabilities din, mga utang rin, na kung saan hindi buo ang ginamit mo para sa pag-construct, para sa pag-build ng qualifying asset. Portion lang, a part of that. So, yun yung reason bakit sineparate ko. Whole and part. May mga liabilities na kung saan whole of that liability is used to produce or construct the qualifying asset. May mga liabilities din na kung saan portion lang or part of that are used to construct or build the qualifying asset. Kaya, because of that, meron tayong specific borrowing and general borrowing. Now, itong si specific borrowing, madali lang siya. Kasi nga, whole of the liabilities used to construct the qualifying asset. Whole liability yung ginamit. The entire liability. So with that, interest expense on specific borrowing. So kung liability and loan yan, so let's say 1 million peso loan times 10% interest rate. So yung interest expense mo na 100,000, yun. Minus the investment income and earned on specific borrowings. Yan, may example yan mamaya. Basta, pag may sinabi ditong investment income, less mo yan, deduct mo yan para makarating ka sa borrowing cost eligible for capitalization. Isasama mo yan sa cost of the asset. Yan pag specific borrowing. Madali lang, diba? Madali lang specific borrowing. Tingnan mo yung liability. Hanapin mo yung interest expense by multiplying the interest rate. Meron ka ng interest expense on specific borrowing. Check mo yung problem kung may investment income earned on that specific borrowing. Earned on that specific borrowing. Pag wala, okay. Pero pag meron, deduct mo. Then afterwards, borrowing cost eligible for capitalization, ito na. Oh, easy peasy. Na nagpapahaba dito sa borrowing cost pag general borrowing. Kasi nga, not all of the utang was used to produce the qualifying asset. Portion lang. So, with that, kailangan mo i-generalize. Parang kailangan mo siyang i-average. Yun yung reasoning. O yun yung principle dito under the general borrowing. So, with that, ito yung computation. Don't worry, tiris lang tayo dito. Paulit-ulit ko sinasabi para baka yung iba sa inyo kinakabahan na, hala sir, grabe man, advance naman. Hindi, tiris lang tayo dito. At ang mga to, illustrative examples lang. To further understand the topic. Charot. So yan na. Ito, qualifying assets financed through general borrowing. Total interest expense on general borrowing. So i-add mo lahat ng interest expense from the general borrowing. O pag multiple liabilities yan, bang liability 1, liability 2, liability 3, tapos general borrowing sila. Okay, interest expense on general borrowing, add mo lahat ng interest expense sila. Divided by the total general borrowing, ibig sabihin total liabilities that was used to finance the qualifying asset para malaman mo yung capitalization rate. With that, hanapin mo na yung average expenditure on the asset multiply by the capitalization rate. Ito yun. Para malaman mo yung borrowing cost that may be eligible for capitalization. Now, may mas complex na problem dyan kapag combined specific and general borrowing. Pero later on yan. Pero ito yung nature nila. May mga meron yung specific, may ginagamit na specific, may ginagamit na general borrowing, but that's for in-depth discussion nyo for intermediate accounting. So the amount computed in the formula above shall be compared with the actual borrowing cost incurred during the period. So ito pa yung additional caveat dyan. The amount to be capitalized the lower amount. So may kita ka dyan. The amount computed in the above formula shall be compared with the actual borrowing cost. So makita mo, alin yung mas mababa? Yung na-compute mo o yung actual borrowing cost? Kapag mas mababa yung actual borrowing cost, din yung gagamitin mo kasi lower amount. So i-compare mo yan. Pero pag mas mababa to, yan yung gagamitin mo. Financial statement presentation. Qualifying assets are not segregated from other assets in the FS. They are presented as regular assets under their normal classifications as provided under other standards. So with that, application of concepts tayo. Problems lang for illustrative purposes. So, question number 1. Which of the following is a qualifying asset? Biological asset measured at fair value cost. Hindi. Multi-million-dollar executive jet plane that is ready for its intended use upon purchase. Hindi. Kasi intended, ready na for intended use. Wala ka nang gagawin, gagamitin mo na lang. Pero kapag pag may gagawin ka pa, pag may additional ka pang gagawin, para maging ready yan, you can consider this qualifying asset. Like dito, for letter C, a second-hand heavy machinery that takes 2 years to refurbish and customize for its intended use. D, a long-term note receivable financial asset. So ito, XXX, ang answer dyan, letter C. Kasi tingnan mo. Second hand, yes, ready na siya. Parang na-produce na siya. Pero, it will take you 2 years to refurbish and customize it for its intended use. So may gagawin ka pa. Substantial period pa, 2 years. Just to prepare it. Just to make it ready. So that is a qualifying asset. Ito kasing jet plane, yes, matagal siyang gawin. Pero tingnan mo, it is ready for use na. So, hindi na siya makonsider as qualifying asset. Yeah? Ito. On January 1, 2001, Entity A obtained a 12% 6 million peso loan specifically to finance the construction of a building. So, specifically to finance the construction of a building. So, you can say that is a specific borrowing. Specifically to finance. Specific borrowing to. The proceeds of the loan were temporarily invested. Ibig sabihin, yung 6 million, temporarily invested yan. Yan siya sabi sa investment income. Yes, na-receive mo na yung loan. Pero since hindi mo pa siya kailangan gastusin, like for example, kasi baka installment yung payment mo, hindi mo pa siya kailangan gastusin lahat. So, a portion of that, ininvest mo muna. Kung saan, it earned you an investment income. Yun yung punto dito. Na hindi mo pa man ginamit yung whole loan, so yung portion doon, ginamit mo muna to invest on something kung saan kumita ka from that investment. Yan, yung ganyang klaseng scheme na yan or way na yan, mas ma-in-depth discussion yan under sa MAS nyo. Yung may available funds ka na hindi mo pa kailangan gamitin ngayon, so invest mo muna sa ibang investment na kung saan, kapag kailangan mo na siyang gamitin, like pambayad ng utang mo, kunin mo na, tapos may extra pa yan, kinita ka. Mga investment ways ba? So, ganito yung nangyari dito. The proceeds of the loan were temporarily invested and earned interest income of 180,000 pesos. So, yun yung investment income. Kasi hindi pa man yung buong loan yung ginamit mo. So, in-invest mo muna kung saan yung investment mo kumita, that is in the amount of 180,000. Ngayon, the construction was completed noong December 31, 2001. How much borrowing costs are capitalized to the cost of the constructed building? So, following this step, since January 1 to December 31, 1 year, saan ang calculate natin? 12%, 6 million, times 12%, so that's 720. Uy, may 720. Agad-agad bang ilalagay yan? Hindi. Kasi may investment income cap, 180. Tanggal yan. Minus 180, that's 540. So, 540 yung mo. So, dito, yan. Specific borrowing to. Ngayon, itong sa number 3 and 4, general borrowing ito. General borrowing. On December or on January 1, 2001, Entity A had the following general borrowings. A part of the proceeds was used to finance the construction of a qualifying asset. So, part of the proceeds, portion lang, kapatid. So, 12% bank loan, 1.5 years. Bago ang kanyang maturity. 10% bank loan ito naman, 3 years, 1 million, 8 million. So, sabi dito, portion lang. So, general borrowing to. Expenditures made on a qualifying asset per as follows. Expenditures, tandaan nyo, January 1, 5 million. March 1, 4 million. Noong August 31, 3 million yung ginastos. December 1, 2 million yung ginastos. After 1 year, construction was completed. December 31, 2001. So, ang tanong, how much was the borrowing cost are capitalized to the cost of the constructed qualifying asset? So, ito, general borrowing na. So, paano natin ito gagawin? Siyempre, huwag natin perapan sarili natin. Nandito naman. So, letter D. So, ito. Tag dito. Ipa-follow natin yung example. Saan yun? Total interest expense on general borrowings divided by general borrowings capitalization. Ganito yung gagawin dito. The average expenditure. Kasi di ba? Average expenditure on the asset. Average expenditure on the asset. So with that, ito yung pag-compute ng average expenditure. So ito yung nakalagay, di ba? January 1, March 1, August 31, December 1. Ito yung mga expenditure sa kanila. Ito. Ngayon, months outstanding over 12 months. So since January sa gastos, 12. March 1, 4 million. So 2 months na ang pass dyan. So 10 over 12. August 31. 8 months na yung nag-pass dyan. So, 4 over 12. December 1, 1 month pa lang. So, average expenditure, dyan. Then, add nyo, 9,500,000 yung average expenditure. Now, the capitalization rate is computed as follows. Total interest expense on the general borrowings and divided by the total general borrowings. So, ang general borrowings natin, yung total interest expense natin for the general borrowings is 1 million times 12% and 8 million times 10%. So that's 920,000. And the total general borrowings is 1 million plus 8 million, 9 million. 10.22 ang ating capitalization rate. So with that, multiply the average expenditure to the capitalization rate of 970,900. Ngayon, ang tanong dito, ngayon, take note, sabi dito. Ngayon, itong na-compute mo, compare mo yan sa actual borrowing cost. Kung sinong lower sa kanila, yun yung gagamitin. Ngayon, in this case, 970 yung na-compute mong borrowing cost. Ngayon, yung actual borrowing cost is 920 lang. So, sino yung lower sa kanila? Yung 920,000. That is the lower amount. So, answer dito is 920, letter D. Ngayon, next question. How much is the cost of the qualifying asset on initial recognition? So, ito, 5 million kasi di ba? 5, 4, 3, 2. So, 5 million, 4 million, 3 million, 2 million. Ito yung total expenditure sa construction. Plus yung 920,000 capitalizable borrowing cost. So, 4,920,000. 4,920,000. So, yan yung general borrowings natin. Ngayon, PS 23 does not require which the following disclosure? The amount of borrowing cost capitalized during the period, kailangan yan. The capitalization rate, kailangan yan. Separate presentation of qualifying assets from other assets either on the face of the FS or either in the face of the statement of financial position or in the notes. And so letter D, PS23 requires the disclosure of all of this information. Check nyo ulit. Dito, sabi not segregated. Hindi kailangan. O bakit ko kayo open? So, separate, hindi. So, letter C. So, yan yung ating borrowing cost. Simple lang yan. So, next topic tayo. Dalawa na lang. Okay, G. Okay, sa fifth topic tayo. which is the related party disclosures, PS24. Now, itong related party disclosures, if I can remember correctly, sa intermediate accounting part 3 to. Oh, pero itong PS24, di naman to complicated, theories lang to siya. As in, pure theories lang to siya because it talks about disclosures of related parties. So, madali lang to siya. Dadaanan lang to. Pati yung next standard, dadaanan din kasi madali din siya. Theories rin yun. Wala tong problema tong last two standard natin. Yung course 4, yun yung relevant. Ito relevant ito sa related party disclosure kasi lumalabas sa board exam pero theory question to siya. Kasi nga, theories lang to siya. So, ano ba tong learning objectives ng PS24? PS24 prescribes the necessary disclosures regarding related party relationships and transactions. So, disclosure, dapat honest presentation yan eh. Outstanding balances and commitments between an entity and its related parties. So, the objectives and scope of PS24 is to prescribe daw the necessary disclosures about what? Regarding related party relationships and transactions, outstanding balances and commitments between an entity and its related parties. So, ano ba yung core principle ng PS24? Bakit kailangan i-disclose natin yung relationship ng entity with a related party? Bakit kailangan i-disclose? Ito yung core principle niya. The financial position and profit or loss of an entity may be affected. Yan yung reason. The financial position and profit or loss of an entity may be affected by a related party. Yan yung purpose ng yan yung reason for PS24. The financial position and profit or loss of an entity may be affected by a related party relationship even if the related party transactions hindi nangyari. Oo. The mere fact that such may exist, the mere fact of its existence is more than enough, is sufficient to affect the transaction of the entity with other party. So yun yung chances na, yun yung reason eh. There's a chance that the relationship of the entity with the related party may affect its financial position, may affect its profit or loss. Basically, because of that relationship, because of the chances that that relationship may cause an effect to the FS of the company. So because of that, kailangan i-disclose yung relationship na yun. Hindi kailangan na mangyari, hindi kailangan na magkaroon talagang transactions. The mere fact that such chances may exist is more than enough of a reason to compel the entity to disclose such relationship. The mere existence of such relationship, required ka nang i-disclose. Necessary disclosures, therefore, should be provided to draw users' attention to the possible effects of such relationship and transactions on the financial statements presented. Bakit? Kasi, anong reason, sir? Common sense will tell you. May relationship sila, may related party sila. So, medyo delikado yan. Kasi baka may gawin silang kalokohan, since related party sila, baka magkuntsabahan na pagandahan nila yung FS nila. Yeah? Like for example, seller ka. Yeah? Or seller ka. Tawag dito? Like for example, seller ka, malaking company ka, nagbebenta ka. Tapos yung may kapatid ka na kung saan procurement manager ng isang another company. So since kapatid mo yung procurement manager ng company na magkuntsabahan kayo na, nasabi mo sa kapatid mo, sige, itong mga resibo ko, para kunwari mataas yung sale ng company ko, since procurement manager ka, sige, kuntsabahan tayo para gumanda yung itsura ng income statement ko, mataas yung sales. Yun pala, in reality, hindi pala. Kinuntsaba niya lang yung kapatid yung procurement manager of the other entity. So related parties yan. Yeah, related parties yan. It may cause an effect on the FS of the entity. So yun yung iniiwasan. Or hindi na necessarily iniiwasan, but yun yung kailangan i-disclose. Kailangan mong i-inform yung user mo na may chances na because of this related party relationship, it may affect the FS. You need to inform the user. You need to be honest. Proper presentation. You need to be truthful. That is the core principle. That is the reason behind the related party disclosure. Ulitin na natin, in layman's term, in short term, because of this relationship, kailangan i-disclose. Because this relationship may affect the FS. May affect the presentation of the FS. So, kailangan inform yung user na, okay, may ganyan palang relationship. So, medyo, I will tread this slightly kasi baka may ginawa silang kalokohan sa FS. Yun, kailangan maging honest sa users. Ngayon, we're talking about related parties. Ano nga ba itong related parties? A related party is a person or an entity that is related to the reporting entity that is preparing its financial statement. So, layman's term, di ba? Simple. That is related to the reporting entity. Examples of related parties, investors and investee relationship, where control, joint control, or significant influence exists. Key management personnel, close family member, post-employment benefit plan. Ito. Definition of terms tayo. Control. An investor controls an investee when the investor is exposed or has rights to variable returns from its involvement with the investee and has the ability to affect those returns through its power over the investee. Ito yung parent-subsidiary relationship. If you're familiar with that. Ito yung parent-subsidiary relationship. Ito si parent company. May mga subsidiaries yan siya. Siya may control sa mga subsidiaries. May control over the subsidiaries. Like example, Lopez Holdings. Meralco, ABS-CBN is under the Lopez. Di ba? Under Lopez Holdings. Yung mga Ayala, marami sila. Mga kotse, mga Ayala Lands, under sa Villar Holdings, yung mga Villar Holdings, yung mga Camellia, di ba? Under sa kanila, mga subsidiaries nila. Mayroon tayong parent company. Kung saan itong si parent company has control over the subsidiaries. Ngayon, siyempre, subsidiary is a separate entity that produces its own FS. However, it is under the control of the parent. So, tapos i-consolidate yan yung FS nila. So, there are chances na because of this very close relationship between the parent and subsidiary, baka magkutsabahan yan sila. Kasi kontrolado ni parent si subsidiary under siya sa control ni parent. So, kailangan, kung anong gusto ni parent, wala siyang choice but to follow that. So, yun. Risky yan. Another, significant influence. Ito. Significant influence is the power to participate in the financial and operating policy decisions of the entity, pero it is not control over those policy. Tawag lang dyan, significant influence may be gained by share ownership, statute, or agreement. Itong parent-subsidiary relationship na ito, pagdadaanan niyo yan sa accounting for business combination. Under sa tawag dito? Ang topic? Consolidation of FS and tawag doon? And business combination. Yan yung unang pag-usapan pag nag-advance accounting na kayo under accounting for business combination, parent and subsidiary. Ngayon ito naman significant influence. Saan yan under? Investment in associates to. Investment in ASOC. Kung saan significant influence lang. Walang control, pero may significant influence lang. Ito namang joint control is the contractually agreed sharing of control over an economic activity. Ito namang joint control under ito sa joint ventures. If I remember correctly. And ito, i-discuss nyo to under sa accounting for special transactions. Just to make sure, check ko yung book. Joint venture. Accounting for franchise. Joint arrangement to sa joint arrangement. Erase natin to. Under sa topic ng joint arrangement sa accounting for special transactions, BAPE 6. Third year nyo rin. Sabayan ng BAPE 6 pati BAPE 7 ito. Ang term yan dati is Advanced Accounting Part 1, Advanced Accounting. Ang accounting for special transactions, tawag ito? Ang accounting for special transactions, yan yung Advanced Accounting Part 1, BAPE 6. Ang Advanced Accounting Part 2, yan yung, tawag dito, yan yung BAPE 7, accounting, ngayong pangalan niya ngayon is Accounting for Business Combination sa bagong curriculum. And with that, third year nyo yan pagdadaanan, sabayan sila dalawa, first sem. So yan, joint control and then sa joint arrangement. Etong dalawa, Ito, accounting for business combination. Ito, accounting for business combination to. Ito, accounting for special transactions. Ito, intermediate accounting part 1, investment associate. Ito, key management, definition term kasi pinag-usapan naman yun dito. Ito naman, key management personnel are those person having authority and responsibility for planning, directing, and controlling the activities of the entity, directly or indirectly, including any director, whether executive or otherwise of that entity. Like for example, a director of a corporation owns a supply company. So ngayon, itong corporation, bumibili ng now itong supply company, it has the supplies needed by the corporation. So the mere fact of that existence na yung director ng isang company is also the owner of a supplying company. So the mere fact of its existence, kailangan i-disclose yun. Lalo na pag interrelated yung operations ng o yung industry ng company ni director sa entity. Yun. The mere fact of its existence, kailangan i-disclose yun. Key management personnel. Si director, may sariling company that provides supplies na pwedeng gamitin ni corporation. The mere fact that such relationship exists, disclose yun. Close members of the family of an individual, the individual's domestic partner, children, ito yung kapatid example natin kanina, di ba? And a related party transaction is a transfer of resources, services, or obligations between a reporting entity and a related party regardless of whether a price is charged or not. Ito yung mga unrelated parties. So, may pinatawag tayong unrelated parties. Ito na yun. Ito na may mga unrelated parties. Ito yung mga unrelated. So, two entities simply because they have a director in common. Hindi yun. Kasi marami yan, Director ka ng company ito, director ka sa ibang company. Yan, common practice yan. Two venturers simply because they have joint control over a joint venture. Mas ma-discuss pa to kung anong point nito pagdating ng accounting for special transaction. Basta ito yung mga unrelated parties, just familiarize yourself with the list. Providers of finance, trade unions, public entities, etc., etc., and agencies of government that does not control, jointly control, or significantly influence the reporting entity simply by virtue of their normal dealings, and a customer, supplier, franchisor, distributor, or general agent with whom an entity transacts a significant volume of business simply by virtue of the resulting economic dependence. So, ito yung kailangan i-disclose. Kapag parent-subsidiary relationship, ito, regardless of whether there have been transactions between them, the mere fact that such relationship exists, disclose. Key management personnel compensation broken down into the following categories: spots and loans to key management, and related party transactions, nature of transactions, and the outstanding balances. Disclosure that related party transactions are made on terms equivalent to those that prevail in arm's length transactions are only made if such terms can be substantiated. So, yan ang disclosure. Let's go to the application. So, according to PS 24, related party disclosures are necessary because related parties may result to the assets recognized FS. Hindi. To notify users of the FS of the fact that they may not have been made on arm's basis. Hindi. To indicate the possibility that an entity's financial position and performance might have been affected by the existence of the relationship. Ito kasi in order to limit the minimize the effect of the hindi minimize niyan. To inform might have been affected. Yan yung to indicate the possibility. What is overriding consideration when determining the existence of a related party relationship? The ability of one party to affect the decisions of another party regarding relevant activities through the existence of control, joint control significance, the presence of relationship by consanguinity, presence of interest of one party. Ito. Combined na one. Mr. Y and Mr. Z shares joint control over Ventures Incorporated. Which of the following are related parties? Venture Inc. and Mr. Y. Okay. Venture Inc. and Mr. Y. Kasi tandaan nyo, two venturers simply because they share joint control, joint venture, hindi sila. But rather, between the joint venture and the joint venturer. Yung venture and yung joint venture. So, pwede rin dito na ilagay Ventures Inc. and Mr. Z. Pwede nilagay dito Mr. Z or Mr. Z. Oh, di ba? Pwede nilagay Mr. Z. Pero nakalagay lang dito si Mr. Y. Between Mr. Y and Miss Z, wala. Between the two of them, wala. Wala sila. Pero between Venture Inc. and Mr. Y, oo. Kapag pwede rin na, no? Venture Inc. and Miss Z. Yun. Pero Mr. Y and Miss Z, hindi pwede. Entity A is the parent company of Entity B. Which of the following is required to be disclosed in the group's Entity A and Entity B's consolidated financial statements, the related party relationship, and transaction outstanding balances. Ito lang ang required. So yan, madali lang, di ba? Madali lang ang related party disclosures kasi tiris lang yung lahat. With that, punta tayo sa last topic natin which is very maikli lang. So dito ngayon tayo sa last discussion natin which is PS26, Accounting and Reporting by Retirement Benefit Plans. So ano nga ba tong kahit negligible topic na to, kahit daanan lang natin, pero ito lang. Learning objectives siya, state the applicability of PS26 and describe the accounting and reporting requirements of PS26. Kung titingnan nyo yung book nyo, di ba? Around 3-4 pages lang siya. Kasi naman to siya masyadong relevant eh. No? Hindi to lumalabas sa mga board exam. No, kasi hindi to siya relevant. Pero basically, ano ba tong PS26? It talks about basically yung retirement benefit plans. Pwede siyang magkaroon ng kanyang separate financial statements because of how separate it is from the employer, di ba? From the employer. To PS19, yung pinag-usapan natin kanina, employee benefits. Applied by an employer in among others determining the cost of providing the retirement benefits. Pagdating sa PS26, applied by, for example, a trustee. When it prepares the financial statements of a retirement benefit plan, PS26 complements PS19. So parang, complements, kasabay lang siya ng PS19. Kasi ang pinag-usapan sa PS26 is para proper presentation lang ba? Para may mas maganda kang maipakita kung ano nangyayari sa retirement benefit plans. And to be able to do that, you can prepare a financial statements to be able to show ano yung nangyayari sa retirement benefit plan. As you can see sa book, di ba? May mga FS dito sa book in regards to the retirement benefit plans para may proper presentation lang. Parang ginawa lang itong PS26 to complement the PS19. So, financial statements of a defined benefit contribution plans, ito yung mga FS, statement of net assets available benefits, statement of changes in net assets available benefits, and accompanying notes to the FS. Oy. And to, basahin na lang, financial statements of a defined benefit plan, statement that shows, etc. Ito. Or, ito, a statement of changes in net assets available for benefit plan. So, dinadaanan na lang natin to kasi hindi naman masyadong importante. And mahaba na rin discussion. So, application of concepts, as you can see, sa book, tatlo lang ata yung question for for the multiple choice and dalawa lang yung for application of concepts. Diba? So lang. Answer dito, letter D and letter D. Basahin mo natin. PS26 is applied in which the following, the preparation of financial statements of a retirement benefit plan, whether it's funded or not. Kasi yung purpose of PS26 is to complement PS19 employee benefits. What is the main difference between the financial statements of a defined contribution plan and defined benefit plan? Letter D rin yung sagot dyan. The financial statements of a defined benefit plan show information on the actuarial present value of promised retirement benefit. Kasi nga, complements PS19. Sa defined benefit plan, dyan merong significant effect yung actuarial assumptions. Sa defined contribution, wala. Kasi alam mo na magkano yung contribution. Sa defined benefit, yun yung hindi pa natin alam. And with that, it affects the actual assumptions actually affects it. So yan lang, simpleng discussion for PS26. With that, we end our discussion or our lecture video for this one. So, long quiz tayo next week for this topic. With that, good luck sa exam nyo sa Thursday for our previous lecture video. And sa long quiz nyo for Oblicon sa Saturday. Don't forget that. With that, goodbye. Love you.